The story begins long ago with an old, faded drawing of heroes. It tells how once a legendary squad united with monsters to stop terrible disasters. Everyone everywhere knew about this squad. It was called the Legion. And the whole group was led by Shin, the one who translated everything. He and his friends spent whole days together doing the impossible. And this is the story of how Shen and his companions made their mark in history. But everything changes when Shin's partner says sorry and he is kicked out, leaving Shen, who slammed his fist on the table and asked, "Why is this happening?" He reminds her they promised to reach A rank together, but he just keeps shouting that she knows it's true. The leader of the Golden Fleece, a guy named Jason, starts shouting, telling him that he is simply not good enough, and a hero like that needs much better comrades than. That's better than what Shin can offer. Jason says he knows how hard that guy tries, but Shin clenches his fist and reminds him that they have been friends since childhood. And he did everything not to fall behind. Jason doesn't care. He shouts that Shin's gift is not meant for battle and calls him practically unfinished in everything from swords to magic. Doing. Medea bursts in to finish the matter. She is another from the group and is not restrained at all. She looks him in the eyes and says that he is just a burden that. It hits right in the heart. She reminds him that during their last quest he couldn't even land a proper blow on the troll. Shin lowers his gaze and admits she is right, but insists that at least he was the perfect bait for them. Looking at his teammates, he realizes they are not looking at one fight, but at his entire history, and he has to admit to himself he really has no skill capable of finishing off an opponent. He looks at his hands covered with scars and rough from years of work. He was not lazy and did not slack off in training, but deep down he knows that his sword skills will never reach Jason's level. Moreover, he cannot use the high-level magic that Medea applies, nor the healing stuff made by another team, and that a suit can do ending up in such a situation is very difficult. She begins to understand that his special gift may have run out. Medea simply looks at him with those icy eyes. She says the company is now heading to A rank, and there. We decided to make Jason a legend, a true hero. She tells him directly that with a gift like the Universal Translator, he will not survive those crazy battles waiting ahead. Medea tells Shin that he simply can't keep up anymore. Shin lowers his gaze and finally accepts that they have already decided. He asks if Asu knows that he is also being kicked out and stands confused. If everyone in the team really agrees, Jason becomes defensive and stammers, saying he already told her this, but Shin ignores him and addresses Medea directly. She did not blink, making it clear she is serious, and assured that everyone in the group agreed to this decision. She leaves, simply saying his name and thanking him for everything he has done for them so far. Shin stands alone, clenching his fist, and suddenly realizes she is right about him. He last called them, told Jason not to be arrogant, and asked Medea to look after him. And she says, "Of course I will," because now she is essentially Jason's right hand. Jason explodes and shouts that he doesn't need any advice, and tells Shin that losers like him should just get lost. Jason yells at him to leave all their things in gold. Shin looks broken, but says he will take everything to the guild later. In this world, being an adventurer is a real profession. People take on everything, from monster hunting to before treasure hunting, but everything is based on a ranking system from the level of Prentice all the way to legends who saved the world. She admits that he was like everyone else, dreaming of becoming an elite hero, while he himself says to the bartender, "Give me one more." He stumbles through the city streets with a bottle in his hand, and the thought spins in his head. His former party is actually the most popular group in the city. And he remembers how it all started in their small town. Only he and his childhood friends, Jason and Ath, set out to conquer the world. But back then they were not strong, yet even a couple of simple goblins could seriously trouble the whole team. She always covered for Jason, especially when he exploded and caused another riot. Somehow they managed it, and as soon as Medea joined the squad, their reputation and career finally exploded. But for now. While everyone around was getting better, Shin realized that he had completely stopped growing and could no longer keep up with others. He clenches his fist in despair. He knows well. The only reason he is stuck in this state is the strange gift he was born with. In this world, everyone is born with a gift, some random power that suddenly appears one day and it almost decides your entire future. Shin lies down, looks at the ceiling, and wonders if he would be happier if he had never become an adventurer at all. He lowers his gaze to his card and sighs, dreaming that his power would be truly useful in battle, not what he ended up with. And all gratitude to those days when they were just children and played together, before everything became so complicated. Moving on, Shin heads to the Adventurers Guild, where someone loudly calls a girl named Yumi. He forcefully pushes open the heavy entrance doors and enters the main hall. As soon as he entered, a whisper started throughout the room. People pointed at him as the guy who was just kicked out of the Golden Fleece. Some guys laughed, saying it was about time to throw him out the door after all. A translator has no place in a top group. The mockery does not subside. People say he is here only because friends felt sorry for him, forcing Shinjai. They noticeably trembled until Yumi finally snapped. She shouted at everyone to be quiet. Adventurers should not treat each other like trash. Angelina decisively drives away the noisy crowd, and the guys finally scatter and return to their business. She returns to Sisson, who is standing there. She is a guild employee named Angelina, and she tells him she is glad to find him. Angelina says she already heard that he was kicked out and asks him to follow her to the back to talk privately. As soon as they were alone, Shen handed over all the money and equipment from his old group, took them, and officially recorded them in the guild's books. But Angelina got really angry. She says that after everything he did for the Golden Fleece, he doesn't even have to return these things. Shin simply looks at his hands and silently admits, Jason was right, he has almost no combat power, and it seems he'll be lucky if he manages to reach at least D rank on his own. But Angelina did not allow doubts to take over, and shouted that he was completely wrong about himself. She looks him straight in the eyes and says, in her feeling, he is easily an adventurer of C rank level, even without a team. She even immediately suggests arranging for him to join another top group, Beer Inc., and he is a bit stunned by her kindness. Shin gently tells her that he first wants to live a little on his own, and she suddenly realizes she insisted too much, so she quickly apologizes. She is now much more determined. She says that he really wants to test what he is capable of alone. He tells Angelina that her support gave him the necessary push. Angelina understands this is the perfect moment, so she calls him by name and says that she actually has a specific quest she wants him to take on. She pulls out a folder and explains that in the neighboring caves there was suddenly an orc invasion, then asks him if he agrees to go there and get rid of a few of them. And reminds him that if he, as always, brings back ears, she will make sure he gets a solid reward for this job. But she has one more special request. She asks him to check the deepest corners of the cave with that method of his. She knows this is extra work, so she promises to give him a separate bonus for the investigation beyond the usual reward. Angelina extends her hand and says she will repeat this again and again until he believes it because she has seen how much effort he put in for his old group and guild. She gives him a big warm smile, holding his hand tightly, and assures him, although everything is bad right now, something wonderful will definitely happen. She has seen so many adventurers to know this for sure. Shantern blushed brightly, stumbled, and whispered, "Thank you," but then got completely flustered and suggested she go with him to dinner, after which he immediately waved it off and said he was just joking. Angelina just stands still, completely frozen in shock, shouting at herself in her head, "What am I even saying to him?" Angelina tells Shino that she has two conditions for this job. The first is that he returns safe, and Shino already begins to ask what the second is when. She winks and tells him that he has to take her to a really good restaurant, playfully looks at him, asking if it's a deal, and Mention is so happy that she literally jumps for joy as she leaves and shouts at the top of her voice. He heads to the city carriage stop to grab a wagon and go to the dungeon. Meanwhile, one of the horses notices that he is in a great mood and asks if something good happened. Shin says yes, but the horse flicks its tail and says, "Forget the chatter, just give me a carrot." The horse adds that he really wants to eat fresh green grass, so she just nods and says that he has already taken care of that. He understands mentally. This is exactly how his gift of translation really works. It allows him to talk to animals and even monsters, but he can't help wishing instead he had a combat gift like Sword Saint. He knows that if he had something for fighting, Jason and the rest of the group probably would never have kicked him out. But while he is sitting in the carriage, a gang of rough boys approaches and asks if he minds them sitting next to him. The rough-looking boys in the carriage noticed a girl sitting alone with a hood thrown over her head, and one of them said that. It seems she is traveling alone. He leans closer and asks if she wants to join their group, promising her a fair share of everything they find. The boy laughed and added that the deal also includes nighttime fun, and she just watches and thinks that the offer actually sounds not bad until the girl instantly cuts him off. She says she will not team up with someone weaker than herself, and that even a small child flirts with girls better. The boy instantly loses his temper. He yells at her and swings a giant fist to shut her up, and she realizes now everything could turn into trouble, but even before the boy could strike, the girl flashed like lightning and flipped him over her shoulder. He plopped onto the floor of the wagon, completely frightened. She pulled out a knife and said that if he continued like that, she would not let him breathe anymore. The boy trembled, begged her to stop, and shouted that it was just a joke. She sits right there in complete shock. He understands that her speed is a completely different level, even faster than Jason's. The girl directs her gaze at him. and she tries to understand the situation, tells her that other adventurers would probably celebrate if she dealt with that boy, but then he corrects himself and says that actually they would attack her. He just scratched his head and said he would remember, and the girl just stood and looked at him, not understanding what he was talking about at all. The girl in the hood hides her sword and waves it off saying it is nothing, but she herself stands confused, not understanding what just happened. But everyone went each in their own direction into the forest, so Shinju waved goodbye to the group and that mysterious girl. He stands on a dark cliff, a torch in hand, whispering to himself that it's time to gather and finally move on. And he sees a familiar face dripping down the cave while Shin says hello, and the slime replies, "Long time no see." Shun sits down to talk, and the wandering slime lime greedily munches on some grass, and then Shun realizes that this little one is actually taking a solo exam. So Lime asks in surprise if she now plans to stay alone. She says not forever, but he wonders why does the slime even ask that. Lime doesn't waste time, he directly asks if she agrees to take him with her on the journey. He once again confirms that the annoying blonde leader and the gloomy mage have finally left, because he really wants to go on an adventure with Shin. Shun is truly touched by the offer and looks at the little slime with complete admiration. Lime jokes that someday he will save a princess, and so the slime officially joins Shin's squad. Lime happily jumps onto Shin's shoulders as soon as they set off, and curiously asks what their actual plan is. He looks up at the bats in the cave, explains that they are investigating an orc outbreak, and asks Lime if he has heard anything. Lime remembered he heard that the orcs recently got a new leader. It seems that this new leader truly hates people, so the orcs, who usually hide, now roam everywhere. She understands that the whole pack turned upside down because of one guy at the head, and Lime whispers to him, "Beware, watch your back." They agreed that the investigation would have to be much more careful, and sincerely thanked the tiny slime for the warning. He notices 3 goblins ahead, not a big threat, but leaving them behind would mean an extra headache later. Shen reaches for his sword and asks Lime if he can go ahead and clear them. He can't stand that they attack as soon as they see him. He bursts in lightning fast, and with one clean swing of the blade cuts through the group. Sheathe the sword, Slime chantel. Here, everything is ready, and he praises him for the quick work. Lime starts saying some strange nonsense about some website, but she just pokes him and asks him to wait, they just met today. The little slime says his name, and Shinju nods, confirming that they are sticking to the plan they talked about earlier. He walks through the dark cave with a torch when suddenly an arrow flies past and hits the ground right by his feet. So, Motion stops, looks around at the shadows, and asks, "What the hell does this mean?" A group of guys appears, and their leader mocks his calmness, calling him a washed-up, drunk wanderer who has long rotted. She just looks at them, recognizes the guys from the tavern, and says that he doesn't remember anything that could have made them so angry. The leader shouted at him to shut up, saying that old Captain Shin made fools of them, and now they are taking it out on him. Shin understands that even after the exile, Jason still causes him problems, and says that he has always been bad at reaching people. He tells them that they are picking on him only because he is alone, and that it is their cowardice that keeps them all on searing. He admits that fighting 8 at once will be a huge hassle, but turns back and asks if they are really sure about this. Shin reminds the group that the guild has strict rules, adventurers are forbidden to fight each other, but the bald leader just laughed and threw. Who even cares about these rules? He leans closer with a disgusting look and says that if she just drops dead in this cave, there will be no one to tell about them. She doesn't even look scared, just tells them that if they act like that, he has no reason to hold back anymore. The cave becomes completely silent for a second, and although she is just standing there with his torch, the leader starts to get a little nervous. He tries to brush it off, yells at Chin to stop scaring them, and contemptuously asks what a loser with some useless translator gift can even do. Shun just smiled coldly and said that now he will show them how a real translator fights, but the leader called it a bluff and ordered his guys to rush at him. Before they could move, a dull, powerful thud echoed through the tunnel. The thugs froze and looked around. It was then that Lime flew into the light, shouting that the hero had arrived, and apologizing for the delay because he had to deal with the orcs for a minute. Shen shouted that the bait worked perfectly, and one of the guys, realizing they were seriously in trouble, yelled that a whole pack of orcs was already approaching them. The orcs burst out of the darkness. The leader pointed with his finger and shouted to the pack, "Kill the people, our chief will be glad of such a catch." The bald leader is literally drenched in sweat and despair, pleading with Shin, "Can't we just unite to survive?" She readies his blade and says that he definitely doesn't want to die here, although he thinks these guys are also cheeky. He looks at the 15 orcs and realizes, if everyone fights for real, they can win, but it would be bitter for him if the guys died. The plan is simple, cover them a little, and then as soon as the chance appears, break away. Shinoxen's arrow tore through the air, as if commanding the old man to keep his head in the game because he noticed the enemy leader in the rear and shouted to everyone, "Shoot the big ones from afar," while they barely hold the line. Shin almost decided to bail, but suddenly noticed that the cave was acting strangely and asked what was happening. He points to the bats for Lime. They are completely panicked and asks if the slime senses that some danger is coming, and Lime thinks he might be right. Suddenly someone shouted that it smelled like a fight here, and Lime wondered if that guy Yuya had finally appeared. A huge orc with a serrated knife rushed straight into the light, shouting for everyone to let him join the fun. A figure in a hood slipped right past the line of people and headed straight to. A loud voice thundered, "Who is the strongest here?" And this completely caught the old man and the orcs by surprise. A muscular orc in a scarf suddenly burst out shouting, calling someone out to fight. She realizes that despite all the boasting, the other orc was right. Ordinary people won't understand a word of what these monsters are babbling. The bald man loses patience and shouts at the monster to shut up, swinging his sword, but before that he is cut down. He even managed to hit. She loses her head, seeing how the adventurer of C rank is instantly killed, and wonders if this monster has some special gift. Orc Lange stands next to Chin, and boasts that from his movements it is clear he is the real strength of the group. She shouts to Lame, "Get ready," because the slime is already moving, confidently saying that he definitely knows what needs to be done, while the orc strikes Shin's sword powerfully, he has to defend with all his might. The orc is completely stunned. She really deflected his strong blow, and he even admits that this guy is not so bad after all. He tries to crush Lime under his massive foot, but the little slime is too agile, so Lime simply bounces away with a simple oops, and the orc's stomp hits nothing, just dirt. The orc rejoiced upon seeing a tamed slime in Shin, and said that he was one of the most interesting people he had seen. And the blades ring against the clash swords once more. Shen barely restrains him and thinks that this guy is quite a problem. The more they fight, the clearer Shun understands. This monster might be much stronger than Jason. Suddenly she heard a voice bark in his ear on left, then right. And he moves exactly when told, dodging at the last moment just as the hooded girl bursts in and swings at the monster. The girl says she knew it and notes that she clearly hears her prophecy, which means because they finally stand side by side, ready to take down this huge orc once and for all. The hooded girl looks back at you anxiously, wondering if he is okay. Although she just saved him, she calls him her savior. Chantra tries to whisper, "Thank you," but stumbles over her words. Can't believe she just called him her savior. When he looks up at her, he is completely stunned by what he sees. Her hair is a shade of red, brighter than any flame, and when the light touched, it flowed around her. And at that very moment, everything became serious because the girl stands like a true pro, her cloak fluttering in the wind. Her blade rushes in a blurred streak, cutting through the air with a sharp sound. Suddenly Shin understood everything where he knew her from. It was definitely that mysterious woman who had been sitting in the carriage earlier. The orc was thrown back, he dropped to one knee, and Shin and the girl stood together, ready to finish this clash in the middle of the cave. The girl is clearly irritated that the monster managed to block her strike, but the orc just smirked and told her that she was actually not bad for a human girl. The orc growls that he will not forgive her interference in his fight, but honestly admits maybe this will make everything more interesting, while Shin just stands looking completely confused. She is tired of this whole situation. The girl ignores the monster's chatter, says that he is just babbling, and asks if he is finally ready to fight for real. Although, deep down she already starts thinking, isn't this monster just a complete idiot? With one smooth movement, she draws her sword and tells him that she is grateful for the offer. But she decided to just finish him off right here and now. She lunged forward with a powerful strike, but the orc was agile enough. He raised his blade and blocked her path. Shin is in panic. He can't believe the monster actually counterattacked her. The girl leans back in the air and watches with interest as the orc charges the attack. Straight at her, he lunged, reaching out to grab her, but she didn't even blink, just intently followed his movement while she sharply turned and delivered a powerful slash that cut deep into the monster's side. But she doesn't stop, instantly accelerating and delivering another heavy blow while he is lying down. The girl calls the orc a bastard, and he in response calls her a little bitch, and they both are like that. He finally smiles sincerely, and the girl thinks, this monster is much better than I expected. Shin catches her facial expression and realizes that both these fighters are just absurdly strong, and though he sincerely wants to help, he finds no gap to break into there. Crazy back and forth, she is really impressed that he can so well parry her attacks, but the orc he gets even more fired up and demands that she tell him her name. Suddenly the monster reaches out and with his bare hand grabs her blade, which can Shin is wildly panicking because he understands. That guy deliberately took the hit just to lure her into a trap. While Shen is racking his brain about what the monster is planning next, the girl decides to put an end to it right now. He unleashed a colossal fiery sword strike, and a gigantic explosion occurred. She's simply stunned by the power of that girl, and he cannot believe that she extinguished so much fire without any spell, and is already starting to wonder if that was her final move. Lime looks at the smoke and thinks that after such an explosion the orc is definitely dead, and Shin rushes to check the slime. He is just glad that his friend survived. But when the smoke began to clear, a pair of huge boots appeared on the ground, and the girl looked back. She could not believe that the monster was still standing on its feet. The orc general stands, a dark aura swirling around his body, and he says to her, "Since you showed me a move, I will now repay you in kind." Shinwatch stands aside and watches everything happening, feeling a bad premonition that the monster is about to do something crazy. Suddenly the orc lunged forward and struck incredibly hard, so fast and powerful that the girl barely managed to realize what kind of trouble she was really in. A gigantic blade spins in the air, covered in blood from the force of the exchanged blows. The weapon crashes against the stone wall with a terrible roar, trembling from the impact, and the orc looms over the girl. Turned out she managed to move at the last moment and barely avoided a blow that would definitely have ended everything right there. The orc looked at her and admitted, she is the first who has ever dodged his Yuya Konkin move, and he seems even a little impressed. The girl looks at the orc and admits, he is not that bad. She really thought her last attack would finish him off. But the monster doesn't even give her a second to breathe, instantly launching into another furious attack, and she didn't have time to prepare at all. Lime shouts that this guy is acting very strangely, and at the same time notices, despite all the wounds, the orc is only getting faster and stronger. The girl barely holds on in the fight, and Lime notes how bad things look for her, and she begins to doubt whether she can do anything at all. The orc releases a deafening roar right in her face, pressing so hard that she barely holds her defense. The monster just screams, lost in the heat of the moment, and he looms over the girl, raising his weapon for a strike that seems like it will end everything. She is in complete horror when he realizes that the orc has just killed his own, and asks if he really killed his comrades like that. But the orc doesn't care at all. He tells them not to stand in his way, because nothing will stop his fight. He begins to wonder if this furious mindset is what people mean when they talk about a warrior's pride, but then he notices something else. The girl in the hood stops and turns around. Something about this situation doesn't give her peace. Finally, the orc spoke, sincerely apologizing for all the troubles his partner caused everyone. Shin approaches the fallen enemies and tells the orc warrior that he has something to say. That the girl doesn't understand at all and asks him what he is trying to do by talking to such a monster. She doesn't complicate things and simply tells her to leave it all to him for a second. The orc asks if Shin is just another obstacle in his way, and Shin assures him that he is not. He tells the monster that he has a proposal. He will heal him so they can honestly start the duel anew. The girl is completely stunned, asks Shin about his down-to-earth thinking, but he just tells her to watch and watch. He leans down to grab something, and the girl looks on in complete confusion. Then, Shin explains, if these wounds are not treated, the orc will die right here, but if he is healed, he will survive to fight another day. Shun asks the orc how he feels after the healing, and he stands while the dark energy around him gradually fades. The orc looks down at his body and, not believing it, sees that he actually feels quite well. He starts moving his fingers and making strange sounds as he realizes that his wounds have completely disappeared. The orc begins swinging his weapon, as if testing his strength, but she warns him. He has already lost a lot of blood and needs to calm down. The monster noticeably trembles and sweats, leaning on his sword, trying to act tough, and says that today he will let Shen go, and Shen only thinks, is he a complete idiot? Shen says don't die until we have a real fight, and suddenly freezes, realizing he doesn't even know his name. The orc says his name is Schwain, so Skin introduces himself and shakes the monster's hand, after which they each go their separate ways. They walk through the forest, and suddenly a voice cuts the silence. A girl in a hood stands with crossed arms, clearly irritated, asks Shin what he thinks he's doing, and he just waves it off and pretends he was just negotiating. He apologizes for not consulting her, explaining that the promise of a rematch was the only way to drive the orc away, and she says that this doesn't bother her at all. The girl in the hood can hardly believe it and asks Shin, can you really seriously talk to monsters? He casually feeds a small bird and says that his gift allows him to talk to anything that has a will, and he is delighted by it. Shin waves it off, saying it's a useless, worthless gift good only for chatter, and even because of it he was kicked out of his former party. He sincerely smiles at her and says that although his power is weak, her praise makes him happy. The girl blushes and awkwardly wonders if he is really that clumsy, then quietly asks him how her voice sounded to him. Finally, she understands why sometimes her voice sounded like two. She is putting together the pieces of her secret. But he, it seems, doesn't even care. He waved his hand and sincerely thanks her for saving his life twice. The girl started crying and blushed. She was overwhelmed with emotions because she knew he clearly heard what she truly feels. She loses control of herself and throws herself at Shin in a huge hug, exclaiming that she finally found her rescuers. At first, the little bird is simply happy that she smells nice, but from the unexpected touch and how soft she is, suddenly panics. Lime popped up right between them and casually greeted the couple. Cassandra steps back a little, blushing awkwardly, and admits that she is quite confused about everything. It turned out her full name is Cassandra, and people know her as a charming prophetess. Chantelser is the one who should apologize, and then he introduces himself and Lime again. She says that she also played alone, and he is still a bit surprised that she can talk to animals like that. Shin simply looks at her warmly and says that she has a very beautiful name, and that makes her. For a moment, look up at the sky before telling him that, if he doesn't mind. She wants him to join her and asks if she is really serious about creating a party. He is completely stunned, repeats her words as if he doesn't believe it's true. Cassandra just looks at him with a gentle, rosy smile and asks if he really wants this. Moving on, the action returns again to the main guild headquarters. Angelina reviews the things she brought, flipping through notes, and notices that the orc tribe is already restless because of the new leader. Checking today's harvest, she asks about that gifted orc he mentioned, and thanks him for the delivery, saying that this information is exactly what they need to complete the Great Hunt plan. Shin repeats her words, and Angelina adds that the guild will officially announce it very soon. She adds that she will simply melt with happiness if he decides to take on this request when the time finally comes. She begins to think about how much has happened today and suddenly remembers those guys from earlier. He asks her if those guys who tried to start a fight with him this morning have returned to the guild at all. Angelina says there is still no sign of them, and although these guys are veterans who shouldn't be doing anything foolish, she still looks a bit worried. And asks as soon as possible if something has happened there that she should know about. He doesn't even have time to respond when she throws him a look and says that no matter what happens, I am always on your side. She started sweating, trying to pretend that it was no big deal. He says they just accidentally crossed paths in the cave. Angelina froze for a moment, looking at him, then said she wouldn't insist if this was his story, but the suspicion in her eyes was quite obvious. Suddenly, she slammed her palms on the table and leaned forward, demanding to know who the woman was that he came back with. A frightening expression appeared on her face, and she asked if he was really flirting with girls instead of going on adventures. She flopped onto the counter, muttering offendedly that looking for casual relationships in a dungeon is completely wrong. Shumpenix waved his hands and assured her that she misunderstood everything, swearing that this woman just helped him out of trouble. So, he pushes the conversation further and asks if she knows anything about what Cassandra's adventure is really like. Angelina opens the guild records and notices with surprise. It turns out she is quite famous in some circles. She is called Cassandra of Misfortune. The documents say she is a solo adventurer B-rank with blood-red hair, and even during descents into high-level dungeons with a group, she is impossible to miss. She is known as a skilled swordswoman who uses a unique weapon from the east, a katana. The records say that Cassandra is a survivor, the only one who always returns alive from missions, and Angelina. Admit it, her skills are genuine, although she would never seriously advise going to party with her. She says it's just a rumor, no one knows for sure, but there's no smoke without fire. Shin listens, wondering if that's how it is, and sincerely thanks Angelina for all the help with the information. Shin recalls how he first met her. He just can't imagine her being evil and thought there was something more behind it. He decides he'll find out everything himself. If he ends up being deceived, he'll blame only his bad premonition, but his. His thoughts were abruptly cut off when Angelina suddenly called him by name to get his attention. She jumped a little, answered her, then sharply changed her tone and asked when they both should go to dinner. She nervously plays with her hair and says that things have finally calmed down a bit in the guild, so she can take a break. She blushes and shyly asks if he's really sure he wants to go alone with him. Angelina looks at him warmly and says, yes, primarily because he always takes such good care of her in the guild. She smiles and says that now she manages on her own without problems, so she suggests going out to celebrate. Chantelser will definitely get in touch soon, and inside, he is simply going crazy with admiration. He begins to think whether he is finally lucky, and it seems incredibly crazy to him that some girl really wants to go to dinner with him. This is a real breakthrough compared to his days in the Argonauts, when every girl was interested only in Jason. But then he tries to stay grounded, reminding himself that Angelina is just a nice person, and probably it's just a professional attitude. And his train of thought breaks off when Cassandra finally appears and asks, "Did I make you wait?" She smiles and tells him that it's not a problem. She even likes to peek into the guilds of new cities to see with her own eyes how strong the local adventurers are. They sit next to each other. She notices his smile and asks, "Why are you smiling like a madman? Did something good happen?" Shin was so confused that he started to deny it, insisting that he was not smiling at all, since he is known as a calm, serious guy. She pointed at the menu and said with a smile that the herbal pork sauté is definitely just what is needed. Cassandra smiled broadly and said she would take his word for it because she is so impatiently waiting for the food. She notices that she is in a great mood and asks if this is her favorite dish, but tells him that she is actually just happy because it has been an eternity since she ate with someone. She begins to blush, lowers her eyes, and wonders if she got too carried away with this moment. She raises a shy look at him and asks if he doesn't find it strange that she is so happy. Shinju laughed and told her that today he was treating, so she should boldly order whatever she wished. When they finished eating, Shen stood up and suggested that it was time to talk about the official formation of the squad, asking her to follow him. He opened the door for her, and they headed to a slightly more secluded place to discuss matters. As soon as they settled down, Shen pulled out his card and said it was worth starting with exchanging guild cards, then asked if she minded. Cassandra reached for the card and said that it was actually the best idea, that way she wouldn't have to explain her situation out loud. Shen looked at the card and his jaw dropped. It was filled with rare high-level skills he had never even heard of. He tried to read the description of the gift, but part of the text was completely crossed out, and then he realized she was actually a half-blood. Cassandra looked him in the eyes and said she needed to vent about two things. She touched her hair and admitted that, as he had probably already noticed, she was not entirely human. She sadly looked away and confessed to him. She was a half-blood, demon blood flowed in her veins. He was simply stunned and asked in horror if she was really talking about a demon. He couldn't take the risk. He asked if she meant the same demons from the legends. He pondered about the representatives of the demonic race, those who were famous for power, seemingly beyond any scale. It is said that in reality, they are descendants of gods who were overthrown after losing a huge war for world domination. Nowadays, almost no one has seen them, but because of their immense power, everyone knows the legends about them. She says that they definitely exist, but usually live like true recluses. Cassandra admits that although this is her kin, she has never seen any alive either. Finally, it dawns on him that the legendary blood of the god's tier really flows through her veins right now. Shin rubs his chin, trying to understand that she is a half-demon, and she quietly nods, confirming that he is right. Cassandra absorbed everything and realized Shen has the perfect skill set for a forward. Plus, the gift of foresight makes everything much easier as soon as the fight begins. She catches herself thinking how beautiful she is, and thinks that the guy on her team will be the happiest in the world. Cassandra spoke again about her gifts, and with a spark in her voice, explained that her power, the enchanted seer, actually does two completely different things. Her eyes glow as she explains that she can cut a few seconds off the near future, but also sees far ahead, like a true prophetess. Chantal says that sounds like the most useful power in the world, and although she agrees that it has no weaknesses, she admits there is one huge catch. She stands frozen, completely stunned by what she is about to say. She explains that her powers are the only reason she is alive, but the trouble is that every time she sees the future, everyone else completely misinterprets it. Hearing this, Shin feels as if he was hit. It sounds exactly like what he went through with his former team. Cassandra explains that even if she warns people about a huge tsunami, they will just look at her and say that today is a nice, peaceful day. Cassandra looks completely depressed, thinking that her gift is actually more of a curse. No one ever understands what she is trying to say. But she suddenly realizes his ability to translate actually picks up her true voice. That's why he has been hearing strange echoes all this time. Cassandra jumped for joy when she realized that Shinshin is the only living person who can truly hear her prophecies. He is like the savior she has been waiting for, and she looks at him with complete hope in her eyes. She brings up their early conversation again about joining forces. She admitted, although she is often judged because of her gift, she is real in battle. Her physical skills are top-notch, and together they would make a great team. She wants so desperately to join him that she offers him to choose all the quests himself and even keep 90 of the money, but isn't. He tells her that he has only one real condition for them to become a pair. Cassandra gets a little nervous and, gathering her courage, offers to dye her hair if it is a problem for him. although he immediately waved it off, telling her that he thought her hair was beautiful and it blazed like a flame when she saved him. Cassandra's cheeks instantly flushed, and stunned that he could say such a thing about her hair, she asks Shin if he really likes her. She looks away, feels uncertain, and asks if this color is not just creepy because it is too alien to belong to an ordinary person. She waved it off, that color is just proof that she is not a pure person, and asked what difference it makes if something is beautiful, then it is simply beautiful. Shen points to himself and reminds her that he is literally the guy who hangs out with slimes. He tells her he doesn't care at all that she is a half-demon or something like that. Thanks to his gift of translation, he knows for sure that there are plenty of good monsters there. So he decided that the only thing that really matters is who you are inside, and that is what makes Cassandra. Cassandra became even more worried and asked if that wouldn't make everything worse, especially since he definitely heard the terrible nickname she was called. Shin repeats the word disaster to himself, but looks her straight in the eyes and says he knows the real truth. Finally, she realized that although everyone else misunderstood her because of her gift, she was the only one who truly cared about him and gave him advice. Even the mention of how she risked and defeated a huge demon pig just to protect him. Shun says how much he appreciates them for, even though they knew it was a bad move, still deciding to be honest with him. He looks her straight in the eyes with a huge smile and says he trusts her, and Cassandra just whispers his name. At leans in, he got so nervous telling her honestly that she is just a very good person. Cassandra stands stunned and recalls how she used her gift to share prophecies with everyone. She admits he cares much more about helping people than about saving his reputation to her. He is a true hero. She turns away, blushing, calls him a fool for being so kind, but still quietly whispers thank you to him. She gets back to business and directly asks Shane what kind of agreement he wants for them to work together. The Chantels say that he is not a savior, and if they really want to be a true team, they need to be equals. So he wants to split all rewards in half and choose quests together, because he believes it is very important to be able to openly point out each other's mistakes and have genuine mutual trust. Shen lowers his gaze, a calm smile on his lips, and admits he cannot be a savior. He confesses to Cassandra that he really wants to be her partner, and she quietly asks, "Are you sure?" She doubts if it is really okay, looks away, and tells her that this is actually the most important thing for him. He laughs awkwardly, admits that he is weaker here, but he is skilled in household matters. So Cassandra leaned over the railing and told him that she would just practice on her own. Their partners are busy, so she asks him, is she really agreeing to this? She begins to leave, warning him to be ready. Her training is harsh. She looks back with a piercing smile and tells him that even if he cries and begs, she will not let him go. The night flies by, and the very next day they both set off back to the guild. And here Angelina appears with a scary smile and asks if they are going on a party and if her advice is worthless. She just waved it off and said it's all right after all, they are just an adventurer and a guild worker. Angelina looks very irritated and asks Shin if he even cares about the advice she gave him earlier since. She suddenly realizes that he was warned about her, but he knows he must explain all these rumors are just a big misunderstanding, while Cassandra wonders why the guild worker looks at him as if he is trash. Reviewing her notes, Angelina tells Cassandra that since she is B rank and the womanizer Shin is only C rank, they will have to take on a special task, which is actually a certification exam. And she just froze, stunned when she realized she was treating him even worse than before. Angelina pursed her lips and continued, I know we are both experienced, but you can't go into battle alone, you are higher ranked here. She explains that if they manage to complete the task and return unharmed, their team will be officially promoted to B rank. Cassandra is fired up, insisting that this is their first real mission together, and they must give it their all, while the other looks completely exhausted and barely agrees. Angelina stops them, saying she is just curious, but she wants to find out how they really became a team. She asks Cassandra if she would have aggressively pursued her to make her join, especially considering that Cassandra previously refused Angelina's offer. She completely loses her head, wondering what the hell she is even talking about, and still tries to explain that there is a real reason for everything. Angelina understands. Shin's initially planned to go alone, and Cassandra literally begged him to take her with him. She even said she would do anything just to be allowed to join, this puts Shin in an even worse position. Cassandra tries to take the blame, saying that she insisted on the party, but Angelina is simply disgusted. She cannot believe that Shin has a girlfriend who says she would do anything for him. Cassandra sees no problem here at all. She happily assures the guild members that she is not some nobody and by no means a villain. She only digs herself a deeper hole, recalling how last night she did not compliment her hair or call it beautiful, and then starts losing her head and panics, begging her to choose her words more carefully. Cassandra adds that some trash guy would not have been so sweet. Angelina immediately seizes on the moment about last night and condemns even more harshly how they got so close on the very first day of meeting. She sharply teases, saying that Shenzher understands women, and it is clear that she is not falling for his naive role. She even brings up his old party, Golden Fleece, saying that supposedly back then he got quite close to some Sue. Finally, Angelina can't take it and tells him to just shut up, acting as if his obscene behavior is literally contagious right now, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with it. She drove him crazy trying to explain that there is a reason for everything, even why he tied his hair. But Cassandra becomes emotional and asks if he lied last night and if he really hates her hair, so Shin is forced to desperately swear that he spoke sincerely and truly considers her hair beautiful. Angelina is already fed up with this drama and tells them, go kiss somewhere else because she needs to work. And as soon as she confirmed that she officially accepted their request, she dashed away, shouting to Cassandra to follow him. Angelina reaches out to him. For a moment, it is visible in her eyes that she will miss having him nearby, and, for the last time, she calls him, asking him to definitely return home alive and unharmed. Shin smiles broadly and shows her a thumbs up. He is completely confident that he will return safe and sound. Next, the B-rank quest officially starts. The two of them go deep into the forest to begin the troll hunt, which was not supposed to happen. He is full of enthusiasm. He tells Cassandra that it's time to move, and she immediately goes with him. Cassandra gave him a thumbs up and assured him that if he just uses the technique she taught him, it will be a trivial matter, and Shin says he will definitely put all his effort into it. But she starts overthinking everything, saying that first they need to find the target. After all, reconnaissance is usually the hardest part of the job. Shin just looks at her in surprise and says that they have already finished reconnaissance. He clearly outpaced her in this. Shantok whispers to the little bird and relays to Cassandra. 3 creatures in the forest will lead them to the right place. Cassandra looks completely stunned and tells him that she truly finds his translation skills very convenient. Shin explains that you can't get far with just friends chatter, but thanks to his skill, he has a bunch of monster allies at his base. Cassandra suddenly realized he was probably talking in the cave with slimes and bats and couldn't hold back. She asked if he uses them to find where the monsters hide. She makes her way through the dense forest, carefully overcoming the heavy, uneven ground. And soon he notices something truly worth picking up. He boasts with a handful of grapes and rare herbs, and Cassandra can't believe he just happened upon such high-quality materials. She wonders how any party could release a person with such talents, then throws him a look and asks if he was kicked out for hitting on all the girls. She completely lost it and started waving his hands, shouting that he was fired because he is weak, and she herself saw his low stats. He looks away and explains that those girls are just his childhood friends from Medea, and he was always told that he works half seriously. Cassandra sternly tells Shin that it's time to stop talking about girls and focus is wrong because everyone has their own role at the party. And it's all about position. Fighters hold the front line close and mages strike from the rear. She says that even if he considers his skills basic, the fact that he is mediocre at everything makes him the perfect support. Shenzhen Press she knows so much for a soloist, and she just blushes, admitting that she prepared exactly for this moment. She lowers her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of this moment, and says that it is a huge responsibility. She does not let the heavy mood linger. She gets excited herself and loudly shouts that they will make this party the best ever. He consults with the little bird and says that the goal is near, and Cassandra just smiles and says she can't wait to start. When a giant troll appears on their path, these creatures are a real challenge for C rankers and are stronger and heavier than any orc. But strength is not the worst, because their insane healing ability makes fighting them a real nightmare. Every hit that is not final heals instantly, so they cannot be knocked down with weak attacks. Shun recalls his times in the Golden Fleece. A troll could only be killed with one huge deadly blow, and even then the strongest magic of Medea was needed to at least. Barely managing the task, looking down at the monsters in the forest, he realizes that his new team does not have insanely powerful spells to rely on, so the only real chance is to hope for Cassandra's insane sword skills and her sharp blade. He watches from the ledge, trying to. He must come up with a way to give her enough time so that she can really kill at least one. When he asks how much time she needs, she simply casually replies, 5 seconds, leaving. Standing there, he feels dizzy. He can't even comprehend such speed. Cassandra is already rushing to the plan. She tells him that she will instantly eliminate 2 of them and leave the last one for him. She begins to think that this really might work until suddenly. It struck him he got a little nervous and asked if she really meant that he should deal with it himself. Cassandra gives him a confident look and says that he will be fine, even promises to cover for him if the situation gets bad. Before making her move, she tells him that she truly believes in him. She shouted that she would see him later, turned into a blur, dashed through the trees, and crashed into the ground right in front of the trolls. Shin heard her words and thought, if she is so confident, why shouldn't he try too? Cassandra's sword cuts off the troll's head even before he can realize that she is here. She doesn't stop for a second, reaches out her hand, and shouts for the flames to scatter the next one. After cutting his legs in the middle of a lunge, she slid across the ground and shouted at the top of her lungs, Shin, signaling that it was his time. The second troll is completely blinded by the fire magic she left behind, giving Shin the chance he needed. He stands right in front of the last giant and shouts that his opponent is right here. The monster growls, focusing all its rage on the tiny person who stood in its way, and should not just stare at it, gritting his teeth and say to the beast, come on. The troll loses his head and raises his huge mace to deliver a deadly blow. But Shin reminds himself, his partner truly believes in him, he just needs to focus and make it work. Shin slips right under the monster's feet looking for a gap, and Cassandra shouts that this is the moment they have been waiting for. Shin thinks it's over, but Cassandra screams that the thing is still alive, and he barely manages to react as a huge fist flies past his head. She noticed that the beast is finally slowing down and shouted, Shin, keep pressing, don't retreat. Shenjiao shouts that he is already in action, and giving everything he has left, throws himself right back into the fight. He delivers a powerful blow, the troll screams in pain, and smoke rises from his fresh wound. The monster makes a last attempt to grab him, but Chen shouts that he won't allow it, and his sword begins to glow with energy. With a loud roar, he plunges the blade deep into the monster's chest. The troll doesn't even have time to scream because the strike was clean. She stands, breathing heavily, watching smoke rise from the massive body, and it finally remains lying there. He leans on his sword, barely believing he really won, and Cassandra runs to him with raised hands, shouting with joy. She, laughing, tells him that he is now officially ready for the real world, and much better than she ever expected. Shun laughs and admits that he is truly surprised by his own progress, but tells Cassandra it's all because she was such a wonderful teacher. The two of them firmly bumped fists, celebrating the victory. Entering the city, they head without hesitation to the massive towers of the Adventurers Guild. Yumi returns to the counter, smiles broadly, and happily tells them that the evaluation of the magic stone of that troll is finally complete. She officially congratulates Shinnen on reaching B rank and adds that although Angelina is currently in a meeting, she will still be insanely happy. Shin says that he really hopes so because he feels like he has long been indebted to her. Yumi just laughs and tells him that he is too modest, and then she shares the news. She has been assigned to lead a huge new project that is about to start. They explain the main reason for the project was the specific information the traveler obtained during the mission. Shen tries to say something, but Cassandra interrupts him and jokes, if you are Beer Inc., then the guild has clearly been suffering from a lack of people lately. Shun froze in place when he noticed a familiar face. Jason was standing there together with Medea, and Jason greeted Medea, then with a self-satisfied smile turned to Shin and joked that he expected him to crawl back to the order in tears, but instead Shin came with a girl, and Jason mocks a very cunning move. Cassandra calls him a cheeky bastard and sharply asks if he even knows this guy. She explains that Jason is the leader of his former team, Golden Fleece. Jason does not hesitate and loudly exclaims that he is the only true great hero. But Cassandra is not impressed at all, tells him that he is a laughingstock among heroes, and that anyone who does not see Shin's value is simply a complete idiot. Jason completely loses it. He shouts, asking what she just said, then threatens to kill her right there, and Medea desperately tries to restrain him. He screams his head off, shouting that he will never lose to some woman, and Cassandra just walks on and reminds him that according to the Burank's guild rules, private fights are not allowed to start. Suddenly Jason freezes and points at her red hair and finally realizes she is Cassandra Calamity, the famous adventurer bearing Solo. He is clearly irritated, and firing this off, says that dealing with a killer of comrades will be a real headache. The comment hit a nerve. Cassandra looks worried and shaken, quietly whispering to herself that she actually did none of that. Medea looks up at Jason in shock and asks what he just said, and Jason yells at Shin, demanding explanations of what he is even doing, but Shin does not back down and says that Jason must apologize to Cassandra. Shin says he does not care if Jason laughs at him, and Medea looks very embarrassed by this, but suddenly he bursts out screaming, declares that he will not allow anyone to insult his partner, and demands an apology right now. Jason shouted back that everyone calls Chanel a loser that cannot be denied, but she came right up to him and shouted that he is completely wrong. She does not calm down, shouting at the top of her lungs that the very fact that he is even standing there alive is sufficient proof that Jason is wrong. Jason just clicked his tongue and said that she finally noticed how everything really is. So Medea intervened, said that arguing is pointless, and suggested settling everything with a demonstration fight. She does not hesitate and says that he will take them on, but Cassandra immediately calls him to wait. Cassandra says to give her this matter, and when Shun looks at her, he realizes, despite her reputation, she is truly a master of swordsmanship. She decisively tells him that this is exactly why she must intervene, especially since this whole mess now affects their reputations. Jason just started laughing at them, mockingly teasing Shin for letting a woman cover for him, and jokes that that guy probably lives large. Cassandra points her finger directly at Jason and says, "Keep barking while you still can. I will take Shin's place in this training battle." Cassandra places her hand on Shin's chest, stopping him, and he finally understands what she has planned. Jason begins shouting at the crowd that he is worth much more than Cassandra could ever be, and asks everyone if they are ready to see him get to work. Cassandra just looks at him, completely ignoring the noise, and asks if he is really ready to start. The crowd begins to go wild, chanting for Jason and shouting at the foreigners to go straight to hell, while Yumi stands aside and worries greatly about how this will all end. The spectators in the stands become even more aggressive. One guy shouts for Jason to break the red-haired girl's nose for him. A creepy expression appeared on Jason's face. He began wagging his finger and whispered to Cassandra that he now definitely knows what her special gift is. He threw his sword over his shoulder, trying to look important, and pretending to be a gentleman, told her to make the first strike. Cassandra does not hesitate and tells him that she gladly accepts this offer and instantly activates her skill Flamberge, Fire Foot. She rushes so fast that a trail of flames follows her, and even before Jason can react at all, his confident face turns into a mask of pure horror. She struck so powerfully that a shockwave rolled across the arena, while Cassandra just stood calmly. The force of the blow spoke for itself. Jason lies face down in the middle of the wrecked arena floor, completely unconscious. Yumi is shouting his name, and the crowd just stands frozen in shock. Smoke is still billowing from the hole in the wall where Jason landed, and Cassandra just stands as if nothing happened. Meanwhile, Shen is jumping for joy. The crowd goes wild. Some shout about how incredibly strong Cassandra is, others cannot believe their eyes, and she just smiles from victory. Angelina runs onto the scene, completely panicked, demanding to know why there is such a huge mess and so much noise here. She froze in place at the sight of the destruction. When she looked around, she was surprised to see that it was she who appeared at that moment. Yumi clung to Angelina and sobbed uncontrollably, and Angelina for a moment ignores the scene and tells Shin that he has to explain everything himself. She says that she caught the gist of the fight, but actually has a much more important matter to discuss, and asks Shun to follow her. Angelina leads them away from the arena, says come here, and Shin walks behind, quite tense because of all this. They end up in a quiet corner of the library, where Angelina seats them. She looks straight into both their eyes and says that they need to stay calm for this. She tells that another group of adventurers went into the same cave where they had just been, and then reports, only one survived, all the others were wiped out. Several survivors from the cave are in a miserable state, and one is just lying wrapped in bandages. A pig demon completely smashed him. He managed to deliver a message before fainting in the clinic, and together with what Shan told them, the guild is slowly piecing together the whole picture. Shin looks very tense. The guild is about to announce an official emergency mission, which means that the real action will soon begin. Cassandra says they will do a final check before sending the order, and Angelina insists, Shun, tell exactly what happened in that cave. Shin glanced at Cassandra and agreed to tell them everything he saw. Now he knows how high the stakes are. An emergency mission is a completely different beast compared to the usual tasks that adventurers typically find on the board. It is a direct order. Although people usually choose quests themselves, the guild specially selects certain adventurers for emergency cases, and those with a high rank are forbidden to refuse. Shin understands, if they resort to such forced missions, it means the city is really in a huge crisis. He feels the tension in the air. When he finished explaining the whole situation by tracing his finger over the map, Angelina smiled and thanked him for explaining everything so thoroughly. She becomes serious and says that besides the boy they both met, there is a much bigger problem. Angelina says it's better to immediately assume that the enemies have special gifts that strengthen their entire group, making them even. Much more dangerous than usual, she looks quite worried when it dawns on her, and asks if she is really talking about the Orc King. Cassandra asks him if he has heard about it, and he says he remembers he once read about that creature in old guild records. Decades ago, an army led by the Orc King once broke out of a cave and marched on the city, and although there were few of them, they were They destroyed everything in their path. The guild had to throw all available Aranks into battle to stop them, but still lost 2 cities and countless lives. Cassandra can't help but notice, if even Arank fought back then, it seems history is repeating itself. Angelina doesn't think this one is as strong as the old Orc King, but he is still a huge threat that must be crushed. Before the enemy forces grow, she doesn't hesitate for a moment and tells Angelina that he and his squad want to help. He thinks it's a good move, and Cassandra agrees. This is the perfect first mission for them now that they are Borings. Angelina sighs with relief and sincerely thanks them for taking it on, then says they need to go over the plan once more before the news becomes public. A few days passed after the conversation about the Orc King, and finally something started to move. Turning back to the guild, Shun and Cassandra walked through the main hall, and people began pointing fingers and whispering about how. It seems Cassandra knocked down Jason. She says that she is getting a lot of attention, but quickly corrects him to both of us and asks if it's time to move on. To find Angelina, she is right there, waiting for them with a broad smile and greets them warmly in the morning while she decisively gets down to business, says that the guild officially asks them to take on an urgent mission, and without any doubt declares that they accept. Because he considers this place his second home, Cassandra also agrees, says she really has no reason to refuse, especially since for getting rid of monsters with gifts, they pay a special reward. She looks ready for battle and admits that she can't wait for a good fight when she. From the back of the room, someone shouts. Other adventurers start guessing if Shin's group is really joining the front line, but suddenly a loud voice asks if they are not forgetting someone in. Important, it turns out it's Jason. He shouts that his squad, of course, is also joining the mission, points directly at Shin and Cassandra, and yells that he will show them. Real adventurers matter only when they work as a team. Next to him, another one of his people, Theseus and Adelante, stand right beside him, 2 solo fighters of C-class who have now become part of his group. Cassandra did not stay silent for a moment, calling Jason a loser for that performance, and with a mocking smile asked Shin if he could translate all that noise for her. This finally drives Jason mad. He shouts that later he will make them swallow their words, and then orders his new team to follow him to the strategic meeting, determined to find out. Trying to claim all the rewards for himself, as they head to the conference room, a familiar voice calls Chen its caster, a C-rank Knight Guardian who. She waves to him along with her partner Pollux, warmly welcomes them, says they haven't seen each other for a long time, and sincerely congratulates them on finally reaching the C-rank caster. She smiles and says that it was precisely because of this promotion that the guild turned to them in this extraordinary situation, and she begins to get so emotional that tears well up in her eyes. He behaves like a proud father, warmly recounting how they grew up, while Pollux is not in the mood for tenderness at all and grumbles that he doesn't need to know about it. I try to teach him something new, but he is almost immediately shut down, and as soon as everything calms down. Castor leans forward with a sparkle in her eyes. She so wants to hear the story about the time she came face to face with the monster holding gifts, and Cassandra also leans in. He looks at her explosive energy and asks if she is okay at all. She just laughs and says she is much stronger than she seems, and he will be a good girl. Over the years he has gotten used to her, but as soon as he answers, his face becomes serious. He honestly says that the fight was almost beyond their strength, and if they ever see such an aura, they need to run away. Chantra wanted to explain that she is simply weak, but Pollock turned around with a killing look and called him brother in such a way that this makes him scream out of pure fear. Watching how they behave, Cassandra cannot help but think that they have very strange relationships. And must catch our vibe, quickly explaining that although they look chaotic, they actually get along perfectly with each other, but Cassandra does not look entirely convinced. But she does not calm down, insists that Pollux is full of energy, and Castor is a cautious, thoughtful type with a sharp tongue. He thinks that they are simply. They perfectly balance each other. Cassandra looks away and admits that she is actually a little jealous. They have a bond that cannot be created. Just copy, she smiled warmly and suggested that they simply focus on building their own connection, so they decide. She was heading to the meeting. Shin Briggs laid out the entire plan. The scouts are already in the field, and the vanguard will lead the main forces to the cave. Although he admits that he is still terribly worried about Lyme disease, he tells Cassandra that he will ask to join the vanguard team so he can get a. They are now better controlling the situation. Cassandra touched his fist and, smiling, said that they will definitely put an end to this matter, and she completely agrees. The plan is ready, and the heavy wagons with supplies are slowly rolling towards the mountain. Seeing how he gets along with the twins, Cassandra said that she seems to know almost everyone. She explains that it all started back in his first days as a rookie instructor in the guild. Cassandra is impressed. He does much more than an ordinary adventurer, so he tells her that sometimes he even talks to monsters because Trust is everything, but once it turned against him, another guy thought he was a monster and attacked him. Still, his reputation earned him a favorable deal on a new mithril sword from the local blacksmith, who she sincerely respects him. Cassandra thinks he is incredible, but just says that he is here only because of the senior. She pushed him through the training. When she asks if that person was also an adventurer, she is a bit keeps silent about it. Cassandra does not insist, instead promises to become a partner he can truly be proud of. Finally, they reach the main guild camp, a huge camp set up right at the foot of the mountain. Pollock instantly notices them and asks if they are ready to enter, while Castor just stands looking irritated. Shen gives the twins advice at the last moment. Be vigilant but do not rush, and if you encounter real resistance, run away. Do not try to be heroes. Castor sharply cut in. Your only task is to return alive and bring this data, and Shin started grumbling that he did not need lectures, but he was interrupted before finishing his thought. Pollock intervenes with a huge smile, politely asks Shin to not interfere too much, then turns, grabs his brother and pulls him forward. Shin thanks them for the help and for Pollock's branches, asks him to take care of himself, while Castor just stands completely exhausted from all this. Pollock is a bit embarrassed and asks Shin if he could ask him for a favor when he returns safely, and Shin says he doesn't mind if it is something he can really do. She literally blossomed with joy and thanks him, while Castor in the background loses his mind, shouting at her about the story she's trying to invent. And then the two of them rush towards the mountain. Shin watches them go and cannot help but worry, will those two really manage on their own? Cassandra intervened and explained that the twins are actually a level above ordinary C rankers because of their unique skills and how well they work together, which sparked interest in the Shinshons. She asks about those unique skills, but he suggests, let her ask them later herself. He thinks it's time for them to set off and attend to their own matters. She stands alone for a second, just breathing before they leave. Shimpu pokes Lime with a stick and asks if anything has changed recently. Lime starts grumbling that everything has become strange. People appear in whole crowds, and pig demons are digging holes everywhere. Lime, pressed close to Cassandra, looking completely stressed, says he is so worried because everyone wants to break into his house, that even on his usually flawless skin, pimples have started to appear. Chantra reassures, saying that while the guild is preparing for the big hunt, the slimes in the shadows are perfectly fine. But something in this story does not let Shin rest. He thinks that pig demons usually do not dig burrows and have never been clever enough to have such habits. Cassandra looks completely confused and embarrassed. Lime tries to get Shin's attention. The little slimy creature says it is something very important for him, and Shin just looks at Cassandra with distrust. Meanwhile, Pollock stands in the field with his brother, pointing at the mountain, and tells him that he actually considers himself quite lucky. She explained that although the Goblin Village rector forced her to become an adventurer, in the end everything turned out well. Castor is fully immersed in the fight, chopping an orc, and in his thoughts returning to the past, he knows that both he and his sister were very skilled from birth, so they never really had to worry about money. And Pollock released a burst of wind magic, as if remembering dark times. She felt that life no longer made sense, and it was Shun who finally gave her a reason to move on. Recalling how he taught her to use a sword, he did not treat her like some sad child who lost her hometown. He simply treated her like an ordinary adventurer, and that changed everything. Pollock feels that Shin's words still give her strength, and Castor sees blood and, worried, tells her that she is wounded. She sincerely hopes that she can really help Shin during this hunt, and simply thanks her brother for watching over her. Castor smiles, says he understands her feelings, but begins to talk about what will happen if they manage to return, reminding her that they are on enemy territory and must be on guard, but just as Pollock begins to agree, she is interrupted. A sudden dull rumble rolled around, striking them both unexpectedly as they looked up. And then, they see a huge horde of enraged plank demons bursting from the darkness of the cave and rushing straight at them. An overwhelming number of monsters. The two of them just stand for a moment, completely frozen in shock. Pollock quickly calls Vin to help her, but Castor senses danger and shouts to his sister to return too. Meanwhile, Shin barely restrains his frustration. There are so many people around that his bats track nothing, and Cassandra is tormented by doubt whether they made a mistake by angering the guild workers. Shan tells her they could not just risk 2 lives like that, especially when he still could not get rid of thoughts about those strange plank demons that Lime mentioned earlier. Shin decisively pushed forward, reminding Cassandra that she was the one who noticed the danger, and said there was no point in being a team if they did not move now. Cassandra thanks him, and her expression softens as she suggests that they apologize together to the guild workers once everyone is safe. And they notice a small demon crouching nearby. Chantal says they should try to catch it alive, not just kill it. Cassandra immediately agrees and quickens her pace to shorten the distance. But when they corner him, she just looks confused at how he behaves. Ignoring the strangeness, she demands to know where those who fought have gone. He presses the blade to the creature's throat and demands an answer threateningly. The goblin breaks out in sweat, makes disgusting sounds, and acts as if he has completely lost his mind. Shin heard the sounds of a real fight from the depths and suddenly realized all those reports of battle were true. The little goblin took the chance and rushed to save his life, disappearing into the darkness of the cave. Cassandra did not bat an eye standing over a pool of blood. She tells Shin it's time to go, and she herself cannot believe how quickly she acted, but deeper inside, Castor found himself in a desperate fight, holding off two disgusting pig demons with his shield as they charged at him. Pollock bursts into the chaos of monsters and shouts at the top of his lungs. The two brothers and sisters found themselves surrounded on all sides, and Castor asks how many more they will have to fight, and Pollock admits that the waves just don't stop, and Castor is already suffocating, but still tells Pollock that he will make a breach so she can break free. Pollock would not tolerate this and sharply cut him off for such nonsense. But before they could argue, a monster appeared right in Castor's face. He tries to say something, but Pollock just screams for his brother, how he barely manages to raise the shield. He knows he is in a bad situation and understands that if this fight continues in the same spirit, none of them will get out of here alive. The orc strikes sharply downward, and Castor prepares for the worst, thinking he must at least save his sister. Suddenly, a dark silhouette flashes by and scatters the monsters, and the mages freeze in complete shock. She steps in front of them with his blade ready, throws a brief "Are you okay?" and immediately adds, "Leave the rest of the fight to him." Shin does not retreat and shouts at the monsters, "Retreat right now if you don't want to be destroyed." The orcs seem unconcerned. They just raise their weapons and growl about how they will kill the people, which might. He finally realizes that talking is pointless and begins to wonder, do they even understand him, or are they just acting without their own will? He looks at his blade and suddenly understands how amazing this mythical rule really is, but he has a better idea, and he drops to one knee and tells Pollux that he will take her staff for a moment. She agrees and is already preparing to try something new. He orders Lime to deal with two monsters, grabs the lid himself. Lime is immediately in action, and Sheen stares at the horde while he swings the staff and releases a wind blade. The magic is so sharp that it cuts the orc in half as if nothing happened. He keeps the pace, calls the wind, and allows the energy to swirl around him. He knocks down all the monsters in the area, while the brothers and sisters sit quietly behind and watch. He looks at the staff and thinks that with such power, he could really stand against the Gift Lord. She stands there, his eyes wide open, finally putting together the pieces about who Cassandra really is. Cassandra approaches and says she didn't even manage to help him, but waving it off adds, if this is the maximum those things can do, then it's not a big deal. But he admits that the orc's movements felt completely out of place. Cassandra agrees, says her special gift detected nothing in them, and that is. He has to understand that something much worse is probably happening here. He has a very bad feeling about this whole situation. He approaches to check Pollux. She looks completely exhausted, opens her eyes, and he quietly asks her if she is dreaming. Chan tells her this is real. He hands her something to drink and insists, swallow it. She swallowed, grimaced, and said the disgusting taste was enough proof that she was definitely awake. When you see that she is complaining a little, it immediately becomes much easier for you because you know that she is finally okay. Suddenly she loses her head, grabs him in panic, and asks if something happened to her brother while she was away. But her brother Castor is actually quite fine. He is just standing there, completely delighted with Cassandra, and calls her a red-haired angel. She tells them that they only made it because these two held on steadfastly. Pollock bows low, thanking them for everything, and her brother just stands nearby, blushing. Cassandra sincerely says that she is simply happy that they managed to come and save them. She adds that they did well to endure, and Pollock looks up at them with deep respect. The Chantels say that they must immediately return and report everything to headquarters, and Pollux is practically sparkling. He says that next time they definitely won't be fooled. She starts pulling her brother away to leave, but he is still completely enchanted, looking at Cassandra as if before him is a real angel. As soon as they leave, she would suggest they explore the surroundings. Suddenly, Cassandra calls you, and at that very moment, Slime trembles as if warning Shin. There is something nearby that he must see. Shin follows him to a narrow opening in the rock wall. He looks inside and his face instantly pales as he realizes what he sees. Without wasting a second, he rushes deep into the cave straight to the figure hunched on the ground. Chenel went out to look for Shuin and came across an orc warrior sitting there covered in blood and deep cuts. Cassandra points to the one they found, and Shin's eyes widen. He recognizes the same orc warrior Shuin who had brought gifts earlier. Lime, a slimy creature, raises his eyes to Chin and asks him if he can use his powers to heal the wounds of the big guys. Shin says he can't fix everything at once, and Cassandra just explodes they are supposed to hunt those pig demons. But Lime explains that several of them actually attacked the orc at once just like they once did to him. She decides that he will help and tells Cassandra to get ready in case she tries to pull something while he works. She doesn't believe it, shouts at him that this creature is literally their enemy. She explains because these were wounds from their own, Lime felt he just had to intervene. He decided that the little slime simply pitied the one who ended up in the same trouble as he did. And he adds if they save her, they might actually learn something useful about what is happening here. Cassandra sighs and yields, admitting that she almost has no choice and thinks that maybe they really can talk to her and resolve everything. Shun thanks Cassandra for coming, and she admits that she would have thought anyone else would be completely crazy to suggest this, but since they are now partners, she is ready to trust his decision, which makes Shun. He rubbed his face and laughed, saying that hearing this from her is really awkward. He focuses and says, "It's time to get to work." Ocean directs all his energy straight at the orc, commanding his power to heal his wounds. Light strikes Swain's chest, and they begin to glow wildly. Cassandra stares is in complete shock, shouting that he is healing very quickly and admits that her own magic could never do that. She does not take her eyes off, says she has never seen anything like this before, and wonders if this is another part of Shin's gift. The orc begins to groan and finally opens his eyes, looking a little out of sorts. He raises his gaze to the two standing there, trying to figure out who they even are. But Lime immediately starts jumping around and tells Schwain that these guys are not bad people at all. Schwaintel stood confused. He did not understand at all what that slime was babbling about, but then looked at Shin and asked if this was the same guy who had saved his life earlier. He turns back to the slime, quickly thanks him and calls him a little one, which... This leads to Schwain confessing. He knew that Shun would show up sooner or later, although this person has had to save his skin for the second time now. Shan just smiles slightly and says he definitely did not expect that they would run into each other again just like that. But the spirit of the orc warrior instantly flares up. He points at Cassandra and asks if she is with Shin and demands that their rematch start right now. But Shwine restrains himself and says he can't bear the thought of a fight to the death while still in debt, so he allows Shin to ask for anything to settle the score. He insists that as soon as matters with the dead are settled, she must fulfill his promise and enter a real fight, and Shen just wonders why this guy is so obsessed with fighting Cassandra. Cassandra asks what's going on, so Shin explains that the orc wants to finish their last battle, but right now he's not in the mood to rush it. She looks a bit irritated and asks if Shin can really squeeze any useful information out of that guy, and Shin replies that he'll try. Shen sits down and without ceremony gets to the point he asks Shwine why the other orcs even tried to kill him. Shwine thinks for a moment about how best to explain everything. According to him, their leader found out that he killed his own people and allowed Shin's group to escape, and they were already being prepared for a purge because they didn't support the surface invasion anyway. Shin feels a bit guilty and sincerely apologizes for dragging the orc into such trouble. But Shwine tells him, forget about it, he made his own choice, and it's not his business at all. He even seems glad about all this, saying he got a chance to deal with the strongest among his own. Shin asks if he really holds no grudge after even his friends turned against him, and Shwine says that constant attacks only helped him level up, rise to a new level, and become stronger. He outright rejects the idea that it's worth being bitter about betrayal. He stands still. He is tall and admitted that he was just doing what he wanted to find strong guys for the fight, but caught himself and said that it was not quite so. The orc smiles slyly and says that what really matters to him is only a good fight, so he offers to help Shin's group deal with the main boss. But then he blurts out that he can't stand how Haoshian's brother decides everything, and Shun is completely confused, where is the talk about a brother coming from at all. She's completely thrown off and asks if the chief is really his brother, while recalling that Shwine talked about some special power. But the orc just burst out laughing, pointed at him with a finger, and mockingly said that he is as clever as his brother. Shwine moved right up to him and said that, if you look closely, he even has the same twisted expression, and this deeply affected Shun because turns out the brother has the same power as he does. He can give unquestionable orders to everyone he has already defeated. Although he was physically the weakest of the brothers, his sharp mind compensated for everything. That is how he led the entire tribe. Shwine says that the brother even boasted, as if he deliberately let someone go to lure people, and the orc admits that he himself did not really understand the invasion plan. Shin's eyes widen, and he asks Shwine to repeat because he realizes that the situation is much worse than he thought. Panic overwhelms him. Could it be that the whole group just fell right into an orc trap? The guild has no idea who they have gotten involved with such a clever leader, and Cassandra understands. The assault operation will quickly fall apart now. She tells Shwine frankly, they will go fight his brother and might even have to kill him right here, so he asks if the orc really agrees to this. Shwine looks very cold, says he no longer has reasons to protect his brother's secrets, effectively giving Shun the green light too. He does what he must because for orcs the only thing that truly matters is strength. Shin just nods and says he understood the deal. She instantly speeds up, calls Cassandra, and shouts that they need to go right now. Everyone is in serious trouble. As soon as they start running, Cassandra asks if he got any useful information, and Shen says the leader is the worst kind of person, but they will have to talk on the move because time is pressing. Meanwhile, in another part of the caves, Jason and the Knights of the Golden Fleas have already advanced deep inside after. They took the guild's task and are already heading to the place where the main orc force is believed to be hiding. Jason is already losing patience, shouting about how long they're taking. He worries that if they keep dragging, someone else will get ahead of them. Delant asks him to calm down. They can't take risks when they don't even know where the attack is coming from, although she herself is clearly just as irritated. Jason points to the ceiling and tells her to just ask the bat where to go, then starts mocking her, saying whether she is even a real huntress if she can't use animals. She sharply replies that she can't just talk to some random bats. Maybe if it was her childhood favorite that would be another thing, but this is just ridiculous. Jason begins to regret, thinks that if Shin were around, they wouldn't have ended up in this disaster, and Medea just tells him to calm down. But Jason cannot get rid of the thought that he was the first to want to expel Shen, and Medea coldly reminds him that he was the one who said that guy is good for nothing. Jason sharply attacks her, asking if she really wants to blame him for everything, and tries to justify himself, saying that if she were more reliable, they would never have had to expel him. He is nervous, lost in thoughts that their group must be the best in B rank, and tells the girls that they have to prove themselves here to finally rise to A rank. Jason insists that he does not lose to anyone, especially Nachin. He knows that now they have less information, but is confident they have the greatest strength, and believes that he is the greatest hero of this story. And then there is Atalanta, the swift-footed huntress. She can only be searing, but still a huge part of the team along with Medea, their powerful mage, who radiates incredible magical power. Closing the group is Theseus, a paladin beast slayer, who has just fought her way to Bering. Jason says that they have 4 formidable fighters with combat gifts. He knows that Shen is now with that demonic Cassandra, but acts as if nothing happened. Theseus feels quite confident. She says she definitely will not lose if they just go straight through. Jason appears near the giant fortress under siege, and asks what the situation is. Just at that moment, the archer notices him and loudly calls his name. Medea says that it is difficult for them to take this fortress. The archer adds that although some squads have broken inside, they are still stuck there. Suddenly, a huge boss orc bursts right into the thick of the battle, and someone asks, "Is that him?" Jason just smiles and says that the hero needs a trial by fire. He thought they were late for the party, but now he's sure that fate is on his side. He decisively tells his team that they will destroy this monster and celebrate a new beginning for the Golden Fleece. Jason shouted for everyone to listen. Other fighters retreat and leave the rest of the battlefield to his squad. Meanwhile, Shin, Cassandra, and Swain rush straight into the thick of the action, and Shin says that the current chieftain was actually replaced by that orc's brother. And Cassandra told Swain that he is quite slender for an orc, which usually means he is smart. Then Shin asks what his brother was really like. Swain recalls with pain. His brother had a weak body, and because of that, others in the tribe never treated him well. Swain continues the story, sighs, and says that one day, while he was away, his brother was sent hunting with another group of orcs. And he is still not quite sure what happened there in the forest. And suddenly, the orcs who went with his brother started obeying his orders, and later, he simply made them hunt instead of him, so. Maybe it was at that moment that his brother's special gift finally awakened, and Lime believes that this is exactly what happened. Swain says that his brother was once a good guy, but as he gathered more followers and inflated his narcissism, he became harsher. And it turned out that his power allows him to force anyone he defeats in battle to obey every one of his commands. It didn't take long before he became so powerful that he even subdued the former tribal leader, but his surprise turned out to be something greater than a simple defeat. His ambitions did not stop at the tribe. Later, he even began to speak of ruling over the entire surface world. Swain says that he tried to stop him because he knew the world was too big, but she understands. It was precisely because of this that the two brothers began to fight, which eventually led to. He talks about the exile of Shwine, asks Shinna not to be so sad, and Lime adds that it was because of this that they were able to meet again. Schwain miraculously sounds quite positive, says he is glad because he can fight to the death with the former leader, giving everything he has, as if for him it was not entirely bad, and Shin and Lime smiled together, but Cassandra sharply interrupted their mood and said to wait. She explains that the guild still considers the leader the strongest orc, so even if they cut down the current forces, still. It would be terrible if the orcs attacked again while they were not watching. Shinigris and Schwain insist that they absolutely must get rid of the real leader. Meanwhile, a huge army of orcs swarms on the battlefield in wild chaos. There is full-scale war. Jason loses his temper, shouting why they cannot break through these minor enemies, since additional people were brought for this very mission. Medea shouts to him for help, arrows fly everywhere, and Jason in response only shouts that he is already dealing with it. But he has to bark at Theseus so that he does not stand in the line of fire. She tries to explain that it is easier said than done. While Adelante falls into chaos and lets out a scream, attacks keep pouring in and then Jason starts swearing because everything is falling apart around. He yells at Theseus to just focus on healing, while she screams in the middle of this bloody chaos. Jason begins to lose his head. He is sweating and growing desperate because everyone is so slow to understand the situation, and it has gotten so bad that he even thinks Shin would have handled it much better. And he swings his sword at the next wave. He is simply fed up that these orcs keep coming one after another as if they have no end. Medea calls him while preparing her magic, and Jason simply shouts back for her to starve, is ready for whatever she is about to unleash. She unleashes a powerful blast at tears through the battlefield, and with one strike carves a wide path through the orcs. Jason tells her that she did great, but there is no time to relax. He calls the team. We are breaking in right now to take advantage of the opening. So, Theseus tries to say that she is not completely recovered yet, but Jason does not tolerate either, just growls at her to return to the fight and cover him immediately as soon as she recovers, leaving. The group rushed to the entrance of the next zone. Jason led forward, shouting to move, and Medea followed closely behind him. He finds several other boys, asks if they are still breathing, says he will cover their backs, and the soldiers look as if they have seen a ghost. They are simply glad he has finally come. But the relief does not last long. Right in front of them stands a huge orc warrior over a pile of bodies and looks like a real nightmare. Jason orders the soldiers to focus on protecting the journalists, asks if they were the ones who caused the earth to tremble, and says he expects them to stay alert. Jason faces the huge enemy head-on, sweating and asking himself if this guy is really the boss of the whole district. And Shwain just stands there like a real monster, holding a giant broken sword that has seen too much blood. Jason tells himself he will stop this guy at any cost. He is firmly determined to finally become a hero. So he bursts into the thick of the fight, barely dodging a huge swing, and looks for a gap to respond with a strike. One of the guys on the sidelines can't believe his eyes and says this is madness. Jason is charging at that giant creature alone. Jason shouted to the group making their move, let them be ready to catch him, and someone immediately replied, we're already in. He parries a heavy blow with his blade, but the force almost breaks him. Jason realizes this orc is much stronger than he ever expected. The pressure weighs on him more and more, and he knows, if this continues, he will be completely overwhelmed. Jason feels that something is off in his fighting style, and wonders if such a muscular guy can really lead all these orcs. He has to restrain himself from thinking about Shin. He grits his teeth and forces himself to stop guessing how things would have turned out if Shin were really here. Jason puts on a confident face, grips his weapon tightly, looks the enemy in the eyes, and says decisively, in any case, this ends now. The whole team rushed together, throwing themselves from above in a powerful synchronized strike, directing everything they had straight. Ink enormous, the strike colossal, a giant cloud of dust and light rises, covering the entire vicinity. Smoke still hangs in the air. Jason shouts whether he finally caught it, but those behind look just as scared. Jason noticed something through the haze and at that moment lost it from sight, while Shwain still stood nearby, holding the charred body he had put forward to take the hit. Jason, filled with disgust, asks if that guy really just used one of his subordinates as a shield to save himself. He screams out of pure frustration when he realizes his best shot didn't even leave a scratch, but there is no time to vent because a minute ago, a giant shadow suddenly loomed over him, and Jason barely managed to react as a huge force swung directly at his side. Shwain lets out a roar and swings the broken blade in a wide arc. The force of the strike is insane. With one sweep he cuts through everything around. Medea just stands trembling, her face pale. She begins to break down, so scared she can't even utter a word. Jason throws himself forward with all his might, shouting for his attack to hit in time. Voila. The blade flashed in the air and struck him right in the chest, blood spurting. He suffered a devastating blow. Medea just stands frozen, watching everything happen in slow motion. She is too stunned to move, leaving. She screams Jason's name as he falls to his knees, blood dripping onto the cold ground. Jason sits broken and covered in his own blood, just wondering how his life could have turned out this way. Medea keeps calling him, and he gets lost in thoughts he was supposed to become a legend, but the orcs tore him apart. Giant orcese Charvain loomed over them, and Jason realized their entire front line had finally collapsed. He lifted his eyes with his last strength and told Medea that she needed to get out of there and save herself. S.A. Charvain lifts a huge stone slab to finish them both off, and Jason just stands and watches, not understanding why it all ends like this. But suddenly she bursts in, blocks the blow, yells at Jason, and asks what the hell he is even doing here. Shen cut through the orc standing in his way without slowing down for a moment, as he. Cassandra and Lime rush across the battlefield to reach the others before. Too late, Shin asks if that huge shockwave was from Medea's magic, and Cassandra says they are already close and need to hurry, then points the way. They see a bright flash ahead and wonder if it's an exit, so they rush straight into the light. She broke through but loses her head when she sees Jason collapsed on the ground, blood everywhere. Medea stands right there holding him, completely panicked, shouting, "Jason, wake up." There is no time to wait. He prays that he will make it, lunges at the giant orc and shouts to this freak, "Eat my blade." Swain manages to raise his huge stone just in time to block the blow, and sincerely wonders how someone managed to stop him. Cassandra and Lime are people of Chantal. He risks putting them in charge of rear cover, and both say, "Don't worry, we can handle this." So while she is focused on that giant, Cassandra and Lime do not retreat and hold the line against the rest of the orcs. Swain tells Medea that he has long awaited the chance to fight her, and she acknowledges with a slight smile. He is truly a worthy opponent. Shin rushed to Midra, asking if she was still alive, and Medea just stood there, frozen in complete shock. Medea recognizes Lime and asks Shin why he is here at all, and Lime only says, "I am helping because Shin asked." Swain loses his head and shouts that he will kill everyone he sees, telling Shun, "Step back before you die." The rest of the orc army surged onto the slope, and it seemed they were about to cover the entire area. Shin sees reinforcements approaching, and he is overwhelmed with disappointment, but suddenly he notices something lying on the ground. He slid aside, grabbed the staff, and looking at Medea, said he was taking it to even the odds. The staff rapidly drains power from him, but Shin breaks through and loudly calls for victory. Suddenly, a gigantic tornado rises and breaks through the ranks of orcs, throwing them in all directions like toys. Cassandra cannot believe that Shun is creating such colossal magic, so she decides to take advantage of the chaos and throws herself into the whirlpool of events. Shin supports the wounded ally, shouts that this is Cassandra's flame, and finally feels that they are safe. But Jason does not take risks. He shouts to the media team to retreat while the flame still rages. Shingran's mana begins to falter due to spell backlash, and the team realizes the wounded need urgent help. Just as Jason ran up and asked Medea if she was the one who set the fire, he suddenly froze in complete shock upon seeing Shindare. La Delanta and Tesias appear just when Jason needs them most, but immediately say how bad things really look. She says that Lime's powers have stopped the bleeding, but now he is completely without magical energy. Pressure rises. Jason looks back at Thesis and asks if she is really ready to handle the fight ahead. While they catch their breath, Jason surveys the gathered team and asks what the situation is on other parts of the field. News has arrived. The rear is safe from now on, all forces to support from within. Delon says that everything depends on whether they manage to return to those two fighting ahead, and she cannot disagree with that. Chantal is the group that must immediately track down the orc commander, because Medea asks if she is really the one who decides. Jason begins to explain the situation, but at the very moment she speaks, Delante does not believe that there could be another person nearby with a gift. Medea says that it is hard to accept, and Jason asks Shin if he is really sure about it. She says that he learned this directly from the orc, using the translator skill, but Jason still doubts whether this guy can be trusted. Shin says that the way the orc fights is already proof, and Jason looks at the dark figure and asks, "Is it him?" Someone says that this whole fight is an eyesore, while meanwhile the two sides continue fighting right in the middle of the field. Swain admits that his opponent is actually very strong, showing a bit of respect while he charges a huge, heavy blow and brings it down with all the strength he has. Theseus worries, was her last strike not deep enough because the orc is still moving, and Swain begins to panic, first amazed at what a monster that woman is, then realizing everything looks very bad for him. The orcs completely lose their heads, shouting to their archers to shoot the human girl and destroy the traitor along with her. In the midst of the frantic hustle, Shin scans the battlefield, finally spots his target and shouts, "I've found him." She immediately calls Adelante to prepare and, taking position, gives him the green signal. He points directly at the orc with the skull staff and anxiously asks her if she can take him out from where they stand. Delante makes no unnecessary promises, simply says, "I'll try," and fully focuses, draws the bow, and aims at the target. She releases the arrow, it whistles through the air, and catches the orc commander by surprise before he can react. Shin sees the hit, jumps up excitedly, and asks if they manage to take him down, but Adelante is already shaking her head. The orc commander falls to the ground. Bloody and stunned, he can't believe someone actually dared to aim directly at him. Delante looks disappointed in herself and says she messed up, but she just smiles and says she succeeded, that guy is definitely wounded. She seized the opportunity and incited everyone, shouting for the whole group to rush the commander now that he's been exposed. The orc commander completely loses his head, shouts for the soldiers to charge forward and cover him. The human soldiers also start losing their minds, shouting that they really managed to bring down the gift bearer. And the rest of the orcs just stand there, sweating and completely bewildered as the dust slowly settles. Shin sees the commander flinch and asks why he suddenly moves again, but Cassandra already. She wildly throws herself from above. She screams that she will end this once and for all, lowering the blade of the knife. A colossal blow pierced him through. She landed flawlessly, and the commander finally fell forever. She raised the sword up and shouted across the battlefield that the pig demon lord is killed. Human soldiers find a second wind again. The older boys shout to catch the rest of the pigs while everyone else breaks in to avenge friends and simply tears apart the remnants of the orcs who are scrambling to escape. When the dust finally settled, Cassandra called Shin. He looked back and asked her and the others if they had a moment to talk. The orc commander is not dead at all. In fact, he quietly slips into the dark tunnels while he goes insane over how everything went wrong. He thought that by eliminating the sorceress he would surely win, and he can't stop thinking about how she ignored everyone and threw herself right at his throat, imagining that the guy must have some crazy power similar to his own. Though he is boiling with rage, he is wildly satisfied that in the confusion of battle, he managed to replace himself with a double. He begins preparing his return, thinking that as soon as he returns to the main layer, he can gather himself and take revenge, because his powers are still more than enough to handle a few people. What torments him the most is his brother Schwain. He calls him a complete traitor and regrets not beating him and forcing him to submit when he had the chance. He sincerely believed that his brother was the only person on his side, and now he wonders if it was all just because Schwain took petty revenge after his exile. He is simply nauseated by the thought that his own blood could side with the enemy, especially after everything. After all, he had previously let him escape. He finally reaches the door, thinks he has broken free, and sighs with relief he just made it in time. But Cassandra is already standing there, waiting for him. She tells him that this is exactly what she predicted, though she just shrugs and adds that mostly it was luck. Shin said it was a perfectly reasonable move to ask her to look him in the face in case he tried something sneaky. The orc commander began to panic. How did these guys even find his hideout? He recognized Shin, the one who was hunting him, and realized that catching a clever orc was much harder than he thought. When he looks up, he sees Cassandra and remembers that she was the one who fought off the former boss. She looks down at him and says that it's finally over, but the commander is more twisted by how he managed to understand Shin's words. Shen tells him directly that he no longer has soldiers to hide behind, and the commander understands that Shen is speaking to him and thinks that this strange luck is his only chance, especially when Shen adds that they won't let him escape. The commander mentally recalls how people can be scary and at the same time too trusting. He decides that the best move is to pretend to be a victim and beg for his life. He feigns despair, falls to the ground, and screams for them to spare him. While secretly a plan is maturing in his mind to kill them all later, he pretends, folds his hands, and lies that he supposedly never wanted this. He kept crawling at Shin's feet, sobbing and begging that he had no other choice but to do what he did. Shin just looked at him and said that maybe the two of them really are alike. He admitted that he too was desperate in his desire to survive and had to resort to harsh actions to climb up. Shin lowers his gaze and asks if for him it is really just survival, then asks the commander to swear to stay away from the surface forever. Seeing a gap, the commander barely smiled slyly, thinking how easy it was to fool these stupid people. The orc commander does not stop begging humbly and promising that he has learned, while secretly laughing at the naivety of people. But she just looks at him and says she will tell him one thing for his own good. Commander froze in shock when she explained that his special ability actually allows him to read people's true intentions. Realizing that his disguise was exposed, the orc loses self-control, orders Shinadu to mock him and rushes forward for a final strike. But Shin is much faster and knocks him down for good before he can even land a hit. Cassandra approaches Shin and says he did well to realize that this orc was really the main course. He even tried to hide behind a double. Catching his breath, Shin admits that guy was much smarter than he thought, although he would soon have ceased to be a threat anyway. Cassandra notices the look on Shin's face and begins to ask what happened, and at that very moment Shin thinks that he and the orc are not so different, because both were just trying to survive as best they could. She looks him straight in the eyes and asks, "Do you really think that?" And he is completely thrown off balance by this. And then she just burst out laughing at him, and he, stumbling over his explanations, looked completely embarrassed. Cassandra stands right in front of Shin's to put a stop to it, and tells him that he is not at all like that orc that one saw only tools for use in his own, even if Shin's had the power to treat her like a pawn. Instead, he asked her to become his partner, the complete opposite of that orc, who always used his special gift only for his own benefit. She sharply points at him with her finger and makes it clear that he uses his power to help people, so they are not alike at all. She just stands there, freezing for a moment in complete silence. This slightly throws Cassandra off track. She starts to panic and asks him not to just fall silent, because it makes everything too awkward. She tries to appear calm, turns away, and rushes off, shouting that everyone is already leaving and they need to go find the rest of the friends. When everything was coming to an end, Shen approached Swain and let him know that the fight on their side was now officially over. Swain glanced at the dead chieftain and shrugged, as if to say he tried a sneaky ambush and died because of it. She lowers her gaze when he says Swain's name, but the orc just shrugs and says they fought to the death and his older brother lost, and that's that. He returns in thought to the times when he was still very small, remembering how the commander really shared with him that tiny piece of meat he had and how delicious it was then. They say that before that boy gained all that power, he really had a very good heart. Walshin just stands in complete silence. Swain admits that he does not know how people mourn their dead, so he asks Shun to take care of the rest, and Shun simply thanks him quietly. They firmly bumped fists. Swain asks not to forget their promise, and Shin says that he will definitely return. He left Shin standing there for a second and watched as Cassandra began to walk ahead of him. He stands there alone for a few minutes, just staring at the massive ruined gate of the fortress. Later that night, the scene moved to the Corinth Adventurers Guild, a place shining with light and buzzing with people. And in the local tavern, the whole hall is packed with adventurers who, after a long day, are eating and drinking lively. A mountain of food is spread out on the tables, and someone loudly shouted, "Take a shot and let's drink to our victory over the orcs." The tavern erupts, everyone raises their mugs for a powerful toast and loudly shouts, "To victory." But the noise suddenly quiets down when someone calls out Shin's name, and he and Lime turn around to see who it is. A group of girls crowded up to them, asking if this is the famous slime everyone is talking about, and begging to be allowed to pet his leaves. Lime, clearly too excited by the attention, says he will be back soon, and Shin is left speechless. Lime suddenly lunged into the air right at the girls, and they immediately start fighting over him. One girl tightly hugs him and whispers how pleasant he is to the touch. Shin just looks at his friend, who behaves like a real pervert, while Lime laughs to himself, saying that girls are much better than boys. This immediately makes one freeze and wonder, does that slime really understand every word people say? Suddenly, a teasing voice sounded from the side, mocking Shin for his huge smile while he watched the chaos. And he realizes it's Cassandra, who already, like a real pro, drains a huge mug of beer in one gulp. Cassandra Shinatasi blushed. Shinatasa asks how much she drank, and she just giggles and says she won't tell. Then she pushes a full mug toward him and says that it's time for him to start drinking too, and this completely caught him off guard when he takes the drink and, a little surprised, admits that seeing her like this is a real surprise, because he never thought she liked such noisy places. But Cassandra looks away and says that actually she once tried to go to such a party, only. Everything went badly during the whole time, not a single person even tried to approach and talk to her. Shin just smiles and tells her that probably it's because she is so beautiful that everyone else was even afraid to approach. This drives her crazy. She panics and declares that this can't be true, while the other just takes a sip and asks if she really believes that. He does not back down and persistently tells her that her outfit looks wonderful on her today and she looks beautiful. Cassandra's face completely flushed, and she tells him that he just says everything that sounds good to make her feel better. But after a second, she shyly looks down and still says to him, "Thank you for the compliment." Shunin and Cassandra were just relaxing with drinks when suddenly a group of adventurers approached the woman. One guy got right under her nose and says that her fight with the Orc Lord was incredible, begging her to tell the whole story. Cassandra looks completely stunned when another guy asks if she really beat the Black Orc and made him an ally. Suddenly she realizes these are guys from the front line, and at that moment, they start telling Cassandra that everyone admires her strength. The crowd grows bigger and one guy even calls her an angel, saying that even when she is so worried, she is incredibly beautiful. And it really touches a little when you see how many people sincerely want to talk to her now. But Cassandra cannot stand such attention, panics, says she has to go make her rounds, and hurriedly rushes into the crowd. As soon as she stepped away, she notices Angelina nearby. She looks very uncomfortable, while some guy is trying to flirt with her. So he shouts that he has a report for her, and this gives her the perfect excuse to tell the guy that she is being called for work. Angelina sighs loudly with immense relief and thanks him for the rescue, but he simply tells her that it is her own fault for being so beautiful. Angelina just throws him a glance and says that he probably tells every girl the same thing. She did not stop, recalling how he chased after Cassandra and Pollux, and then blurted out that he is a real ladies' man. He stood stunned. She waved it off with laughter, says it is just a joke, and then told him that she heard how much he actually worked. Leaning forward and blushing, she sincerely said that she is happy for him, and Shin, stumbling, barely whispered a short thank you. He tries to be modest, saying that everything is thanks to the guild's support, while Angelina meanwhile just walks away, humming a cheerful tune to herself. Later, she sits at the table with Cassandra and says that Jason still did not show up in the hall, somehow. It turned out Medea said that the guy fully recovered, but still refused to appear at the victory party. Just sigh a little and accept it as it is. Angelina loudly claps her hands to get everyone's attention and joyfully exclaims that she is officially the MVP of the entire mission. This throws him into complete panic. He fusses and stubbornly tells everyone that he did almost nothing, insisting that they won only thanks to Cassandra and the team. Angelina does not stop, says that their performance really was simply amazing. But she is simply amazed at how he managed to pull a Black Orc into the group, especially since all she does is look for a true leader. She immediately said that his skill in leading a monster squad reminded her of the legendary S-rank Demon Lord, to which Shen just shrugged and said she was clearly overestimating him. He nervously tries to explain with a trembling voice that he is actually not their master and not anyone like that at all. He says that Lime and the orcs are just helping him, but Angelina does not believe it and insists that she is not overestimating him at all. She approaches closer and directly tells him that she truly considers him incredible. She emotionally recounted that she saw how hard he worked to become stronger, risking his own life. All because he noticed a true orc lord, and when he defeated him left no traces behind. She tells him that today he can definitely boast a little. She suggests he go around telling everyone that he was the one who defeated the boss, and Shin is left completely speechless. Just as they are talking, Yumi calls from afar and asks Angelina for a moment. Angelina's expression looked quite upset. They were just reaching the most interesting part of the conversation, so she looked over. She leans in, still in her clothes, and quietly whispers to Shin that they absolutely have to go eat together soon. She runs out and stands there, catching her breath, thinking it was too close until Cassandra suddenly appears, waving her hands and shouting his name to get his attention. She starts knocking and asks why he didn't call her, calling him mean, while awkwardly explaining that he didn't want to disturb. A piercing look flashes in her eyes. She tells him that if it's him then it's not a problem at all, and insists they have a drink together. They start clinking mugs, and Shin asks what she was babbling about, because it's clear she's already had a bit too much. Cassandra blushes, lowers her gaze to her drink, and admits that she was babbling all the time about her hero. Chanteltzer understands this. Everyone has someone they look up to, and asks her to name the adventurer she's talking about. While drinking, Pollock keeps the name of her hero a secret, but sincerely thanks Shauna for saving her life in that cave. She admits that for a moment he really thought it was all over, but he's just glad he made it because he was very worried about her. She raised her wide-open eyes to him, completely touched, and asked if he really was worried about her. And then she just loses her head, screams with happiness, and throws herself at Shin so hard that he can barely shout her name. Pollock pressed against his chest and apologized, saying that the alcohol made her so clingy, although she couldn't help adding that he smells very nice. She looks into his eyes and says that she has long wanted to tell him something, asks if he will listen to her, and at the same time just stands there, overwhelmed by panic. Just as she begins to tell him about her true feelings, someone ruins the moment by shouting her name at the top of their voice. It's her brother Castor. He starts lecturing her about inappropriate behavior and says to rely on him, not some weekly magazine, but he is cut off mid-sentence. Pollock calls her brother a complete idiot for ruining such a close moment, while Castor rolls on the ground sobbing that his shins are broken. She's about to ask her what she wanted to say before the interruption, but he changes his mind and decides that the conversation will have to be postponed until another time. A terrible smile plays on Pollock's face. She looks at Shun and tears her hair out because she can't believe he ignored her just to go flirt with other girls. She makes things even worse by hotly telling him what a rude person he is and that she will just kill him. She herself only sweats and asks why she is so angry. He tries to explain that he wasn't flirting with anyone, but gets confused and says that he supposedly was just talking to the girls, and at that moment realizes he dug his own grave. Pollock explodes and screams that she will knock that rude attitude out of him, turning what was supposed to be a simple show fight into a complete one-sided rout that leaves them face down on the mat completely broken. The next morning, Shin opens the window and looks out at the quiet town. He involuntarily thinks about Cassandra, wonders why he once thought he could defeat her, but is glad they were partners in everything. Several days have passed since the Orc Rebellion broke out, and the guild is finally returning to its usual rhythm. Ocean is preparing to set off with Lime, grabbing a small item and whispering to himself that it's better to take it just in case. He hides the item in his gear and desperately hopes he won't have to use it for what lies ahead. Now that the path to the cave has finally reopened, Shun and Cassandra has returned to fulfill the promise, standing there. At the entrance, Shin looked at Cassandra and whispered that he truly believes in her. This is the big moment they have been waiting for so long. Cassandra looks completely focused and tells him that she knows all the tricks, and she definitely won't lose as long as her partner stands beside her. She steps onto the clearing where Swain is waiting, apologizes for being late, and anxiously asks how his wounds are healing. Swain simply crossed his massive arms over his chest and said that he is already quite bored. He even thought about going to look for her himself. He looks her straight in the eyes and says, "If it is you who takes my life, then I couldn't imagine a better way to die. It's time to begin." The three stepped apart into the open field, the tension rising. They were preparing for the start of the duel. Lime raises his eyes to Chin and asks if this fight even makes sense, admitting that he hates seeing his friends suffer, but they have a promise to keep. He understands, since Swain kept his word, they must respond in kind. Watching Swain warm up, Shen realizes, for a warrior like him, a serious fight with a strong opponent is the highest sign of respect. Cassandra tells Shen not to worry about her. She was actually looking forward to this clash herself. She lowers into a low stance opposite Swain, and they both tense up, preparing. The duel finally begins, where Cassandra's prophecy and her fiery skills collide with Swain's furious berserker strength, and it's impossible to say who has the advantage. They have fought together before, so they know each other's moves now. It all comes down to who outsmarts the other first. She watches from the side, cold sweat on her forehead, and simply waits who will make the first move. Then they both exploded into action simultaneously, rushing so fast that only blurred silhouettes remained on the field. Swain makes a huge, heavy swing of his blade, but Cassandra is much faster. She zips past him, showing. Slowed, deceptive move makes Lime feel dizzy. Meanwhile, she notices she already hit first and pushes the big guy back. She holds him in a corner, continuously raining blows, but sees danger in how he presses because he knows Swain is about to go berserk and launch a devastating counterattack, and he desperately wonders how Cassandra plans to survive. Swain laughs and tells Cassandra she's not bad at all, even adding that if she were an orc, he would propose to her right here and now. Cassandra simply smiles and says that she doesn't understand a single word of what he is saying, but she still finds it incredibly fun. She lunges forward to keep pressing. Shwine does not retreat and prepares to bring down a heavy blow from above. A huge blade bites into the ground with a loud crash, but it turned out that the giant had a completely different plan. Shen watches from the side and completely loses his head, shouting he can't believe that Shwine actually kicked his sword to change its trajectory. Cassandra doesn't even blink. She stands focused amid the chaos and waits for the perfect moment to strike while he is open and Shwine rushed straight at her, shouting that she shouldn't think he is the same person she faced before. But she instantly dodged to the side as if it were nothing and told him that she saw it from afar, leaving the orc completely stunned. He slides on the dust, grabbing for balance but too slow, and fails to react to what is coming. Cassandra cuts upward across his chest, blood splatters around, and she finishes the move with perfect precision. Cassandra stands over the fallen orc and says that if she manages to just stun him without a lethal blow, she can prevent him from slipping into uncontrollable rage. Shwine lies there completely beaten. She leans down and tells him that it's official checkmate. The giant surprisingly accepts this calmly, admits total defeat, while Cassandra sheathes her blade. He says it was a great final fight and he has no regrets, which leads to. Cassandra glanced at Shin and asked him to translate what the orcs were saying. Shin nodded and said he could handle it. Shen turns to Shuain and asks why he didn't wait for the wounds to heal before starting the fight. The orc just laughs and retorts, "Is that what you're thinking about?" Shuain looks at his hand and says he should have lost it back when the other guy cut it off, so asking him to wait for a full recovery is too much. He looks them straight in the eyes and says they should just kill him faster if they're satisfied, because if they let him go, he'll attack humans again anyway. He knows they won't want that. Cassandra looks at Shin and says she has a request, and Shin replies that he was thinking the same thing. Shintel says that if he only promised to stop attacking humans, things could be different, but the orc immediately cuts him off. That's impossible. He crosses his arms and coldly says that the whole reason for his existence is to seek out and fight strong opponents, and he'd rather not live at all than give that up. She understands if they don't have to get rid of all of them, maybe they can coexist. Thinking about this, he comes up with a plan and asks Shuain if his only true desire is just to fight strong guys. He says those strong opponents don't necessarily have to be humans, which makes it. Shuain snorts and admits that's true, but adds that now practically only humans come down into this cave, and says that will only be the case until the orcs get stuck in this cave, and then a view opens to the other side of the cave. They tell him that if he wants a real challenge, he should just go with them, and Shuain is completely shocked by this offer. She explains that they are currently third from the top, but they strive to reach the highest possible rank among adventurers. She mentions that they travel all over the world for various jobs. Chantel tells him that where they are heading, they will probably encounter enemies even stronger than him or Cassandra, leaving. Shuain wanted to ask if they really don't mind because he is of a different race, but she just shrugged and said that they already have Lime with them, so it's not a problem. Many adventurers have still seen him fight the old chieftain. He assures the orc that no one in the guild will pick on him. Shuain simply lowers her eyes and quietly says that she understands. She sums everything up, asking the orc to come to the surface with them. Shuain pauses for a moment and says that he understands. She shows him a thumbs up and tells Shuain that it's time to set off. He assures the orc that the world outside is actually real fun. And they shake hands to make it official, while Cassandra and Lime watch as the new team forms. So the group. The head is again in the city, where the square is packed with people, just an ordinary day under the sun, leading to. She laughs and says that he came early, noticing how stunned he looks at her. But she is not the only one who has been here. She is not the only one who has been here. She is not the only one who has been here. She is not the only one who has been here. She is not the only one who has been here. She is not the only one who has been here. She is not the only one who has been here. She is not the only one who has been here. She's not the only one who has been here. She's not the only one who has been here. She is not the only one who has been here. She's not the only one who has been here. She's not the only one who has been here. You. Jin asks confusedly if she needs to work now. She smiles and says that a colleague took her shift, and tells her that she looks great in that outfit, admitting that he almost mistook her for some noble lady. Angelina begins to blush shyly, and she sadly notes that a whole eternity has passed since they truly spent time outside the guild, and agrees, saying that she always seemed so busy whenever he saw her. Angelina flips the script. She tells Shin that actually he has been shining lately since his promotion, and Shin is a bit embarrassed, and tells her that he is standing here today only thanks to what she and another person taught him. She says she feels nostalgic thinking about that person, and Angelina blushes and recalls how they were inseparable every time they went out, and she remembers the shop she wanted to visit all day, and Shin smiles and admits he was thinking the same thing. He suggests going there right now, but his thoughts drift. He imagines how everything could have gone wrong if that person had not been nearby, which could have led to the memory of how the three of them were just starting out as new adventurers and stood for the first time at the guild counter. Young Jason is already acting important, boasting about how easily he defeated the horned rabbit and demanding a tougher challenge. Meanwhile, Medea looked at him coldly and sharply ordered him to shut up. He is extremely rude to the guild workers. She has to intervene and tell both of them to stop, then turns and apologizes to Angelina for the scene. Jason just waved it off and asked if she was taking the rabbit as material, which unsettled Angelina a bit. She embarrassedly explained that the reward is given only after evaluation. Jason tells her to handle it and calls the group to move on, leaving the table behind. Suddenly, a woman named Jessica appears and says that with people like them, people with gifts, there will be real trouble. Jessica asks Angelina if she has even paid attention, then jokes about her being such a cold, exhausted former subordinate, but becomes strange when Jessica offers to massage her numb muscles, and Angelina pulls back and says that she is about to really get angry. Jessica laughed, handed over a can of drink as a gesture of reconciliation, and added with a smile that it is a new product that wonderfully relieves fatigue. While Jessica takes a sip of her tea, Angelina sniffs the herbal drink and inhales the smell seems completely unusual to her. They sit like that for a moment before. Angelina's face softened, and she admitted that she had been very worried lately. She recalls how Jason and At were so determined to become adventurers, and the girl who aspired to become the god of medicine was completely different, and this makes her wonder what she herself is doing. Why would that girl even get involved with people like Shin, whose gift of translation did not fit into the dungeon team at all? Jessica listens to everything until the end, just smiles, and tells Angelina that it is probably better if she approaches and asks about it herself. The conversation was interrupted when Shin suddenly appeared behind them a bit nervous. He asked if he was disturbing, and this leaves. Angelina pretends to be a professional and asks how she can help. Meanwhile, Jessica turns around and tells Shin that she wants to show him something. Black Hand slaps down a pile of collected gifts on the counter, rare mushrooms and strange plants, with roots still visible. Jessica Lane moves closer to get a better look at the loot. She is clearly stunned by what she sees, and Angelina just looks at her and wonders what the matter is. Next to the guild veteran, she took out a lens and examined the shining stone, and Jessica says that these are very rare things. Such a thing almost never happens even in high-level gathering quests. She is a little sweaty from excitement and asks tremblingly how he managed to get so many rare items at all. She immediately goes on the defensive and insists that he definitely did not steal any of it. He reminds them that the guild is already aware of his special gift and explains that the forest animals he befriended simply showed him all the best spots. Jessica does not quite believe that it will be easy. She says that this ability sounds like an unnecessary hassle. Shinegger says he can talk to them, but he will still have to conduct all negotiations himself. Jessica thought for a moment and decided that first it was worth selling those items for quick money and then letting Shin start official training. She looked into Chun's eyes and said that he was very lucky at the start. He completed his first quest without any problems and returned with a bag of rare materials. Jessica wonders if he even needs beginner lessons now, but sees a serious look in him. The first outing made him realize that. He must become much stronger if he wants to stand next to his friend, and the only way to achieve this is to learn everything possible now. Shun looks at his hands and feels the weight of his weakness. He knows he cannot fight like Jason, but desperately wants to catch up with his old friends at least a little. He returns in thought to the old group, remembers how Jason went on the offensive, and Asu gave such powerful magical support that he simply could not match that. Why is he so focused now? He looks more determined than ever and tells himself that he simply must catch up with them. Leaning firmly on the guild counter, Jessica Shintle thought that it was his passion that was the reason he was asking her for training, and simply smiled, deciding that his attitude was not bad at all. Jessica admits that she actually likes people who take things seriously, but pauses for a moment and says that she is a little interested in one thing. She asks Shin if he can use his gift to speak with monsters, and he does not hesitate. He says that as long as the creature has will, he can talk to it. Jessica turned to Angelina with a serious look, called her Angie, and warned that she would be a real headache, and Angelina just looked puzzled and asked what she meant. Jessica says that the ability to talk to anything is a huge trump card in gathering information, but there is also a social side that can backfire. For example, she asks her to imagine what people would really think if they accidentally came across a traveler who was just standing in a cave and casually chatting with a monster. Angelina thinks for a moment and says that it would look crazy. She would probably think that the guy had lost his mind or that he was under hostile magic. Jessica looks Shin straight in the eyes and warns, using the gift recklessly is a mad risk. If he does not watch himself, he will again be targeted by other adventurers. Panic grips him. He asks what he should do if his only real skill makes him a target. Jessica raises her hand to calm him and says, "Relax and really listen to the rest of what I have to say." She says that what he really needs now is not more influence, but a better reputation. She explains that he needs to focus on gaining the trust of the guild and the Hitori family. The goal is simple, to enlist as many allies as possible among the local craftsmen and merchants, because the end. Angelina said that there are no big tasks for him anyway, and Jessica agreed and thought in surprise, what can the newbie do on his own at all? Suddenly, Angelina realizes that she has the perfect solution to his problem, but she is a little worried about what Jessica might come up with. Jessica, with a crazy sparkle in her eyes, tells Shun that she and Angelina will hammer every little bit of knowledge about the guild and this city into his head. She stands there all confident and admits that she is actually a C-rank instructor and wants him to become her personal assistant. When she asks Shin what he thinks about this idea, his eyes light up. He immediately grabs the chance and begs to be allowed to take on that task. The following weeks blur into one continuous fog for Shin. He is constantly on the move, running errands and He spends every day free from the main party following Jessica, and eventually is forced to drag heavy equipment uphill. He climbed the mountains and crammed so hard that his head was spinning, and he realized Jessica is a real tyrant, but she really taught him the basics and introduced him to a huge network of her contacts. Time flew, and a whole year passes, and finally the hard work paid off. Their group rose in the rankings. When Shin's reputation begins to grow, and Jason celebrates that the party has finally reached D rank, Jason feels completely confident. He waved his new sword and boasted that he would instantly reach A rank. He sharply turns to Shin and says that he needs to stop hanging out with the weak and finally start training. But Shin disagrees. He sharply reminds Jason that this sword exists only because of his connections. Sue looks at them and thinks Shin's growth means only one thing: she will have even more trouble. Angelina freezes for a moment and decides to respect Shin's wishes for now, and you do you. Jason does not let go of this topic. He snorts and brings up some rumor he heard allegedly. An adventurer in one group died, whom Jelena was supposed to watch over. Chantal decisively orders him to shut up, explaining that once you reach D rank, everything becomes much more difficult and accidents just happen. For a moment, Jason seems to understand, admits that they could be destroyed if they relax, but his ego takes over again, and he boasts that someone as cool as him will never let anyone down. When Shun starts to leave, Jason shouted to him, "Where to?" and Shun just waved his hand and replied that he was going to a meeting. The scene shifts to a bar. Shin has completely passed out and collapsed on the bar counter next to Angelina. It is clear that he has had too much to drink. Finally, he sleepily wakes up, wonders why he fell asleep, then remembers that Jessica recommended exactly that drink and feels that his head is just splitting with pain. He caught the end of the conversation. Jessica apologizes to Angelina for what happened, and he intervenes, asking both of them what it is about. Jessica kept talking and talking about how one team just rose to D rank and was insanely excited because they would finally start earning real money, while she tries to comfort Angelina, saying that this tragedy is not her fault, but Angelina just looks at the floor and whispers that she never wants to see anyone else die again. She looks at Angelina's sad face and asks the obvious question: if this job makes her so unhappy, why doesn't she just quit? Angelina quietly mumbles to the counter that it's impossible. She really loves her job, and too many people rely on her, so she just nods, realizing she is too devoted to leave. Jessica rushed to offer a shoulder and whispered to Angelina to believe in herself a little. Her job really saves people. Angelina responded quietly and briefly, feeling a little lighter. While Shin lies unconscious on the table, Angelina looks at Jessica with a very worried face and begs her not to become like the others. She just wants Jessica to survive. Jessica just laughed broadly and said she is not dying anytime soon. She has already saved up a lot of money for her big dream, so she has a reason to keep going. Jessica explains that she finally sees how to open her own shop and retire, so she will never let anyone kill her. Angelina is delighted and makes her promise that she and Jessica will be the first customers. Shortly after that night, Jessica officially left her position as an instructor. Almost simultaneously, Shin was rising in the ranks as a lone adventurer, but everything was about to change because eventually, she ended up in Jesse's place and was training new recruits. Everyone got so caught up in their personal lives that the three of them hardly saw each other like before. Angelina was also doing great, eventually getting a promotion in the guild. In her new role, she seemed happy, always greeting people with a smile and life. For a while, she was doing quite well. She pushed herself daily in training, feeling that everything was finally coming together. Days passed, and suddenly someone nearby called Shin exactly what he feared. He immediately turns back to Pollock to ask what happened. She is completely breathless, barely pronouncing Jessica's name. But then, and she finally blurts out that Jessica was just brought in with very severe injuries. Pollock says that the entire guild is in full panic right now, but she doesn't even wait for details. He just rushes away. At the entrance to the guild, chaos. Everyone is shouting to clear the way due to an emergency situation. Angelina stands stunned, and some girl asks her to look away before she sees too much, but it is already too late. They carried the stretcher through. Behind it trailed a bloody trail, and everyone understood Jessica is lying there. Finally, he runs to the scene, completely panicked, and shouts, "Angelina." He finds her safe behind the counter, and someone nearby sighs with relief. At least she is okay. But Andrew. Jelena just looks at him and says that people from the guild warned her he will probably show up. She is completely breathless after the sprint, barely standing on her feet. Angelina turns away with a broken heart and quietly tells him that everything is fine. Let him go home for now. She stays behind and tells Angelina that he can't just leave when she is so upset, and Angelina replies that she is ready to listen if he wants to talk. And suddenly she told him, "Shut up," and Shin, who just said her name, froze completely unexpectedly. Angelina finally breaks down, screams that she is fine, and shouts that she will die anyway, like everyone else. She does not calm down, tells him to stop being so kind and to stay away from her completely. So, Ocean looks at her with a serious, unwavering expression and says directly that he will not die. Angelina calls him a liar and shouts that people like Lava, Hayes, and Juna all promised the same thing right before they were killed. She reminds him that even Jessica said everything will be completely fine, but now she could really die, and all this burden makes Angelina fall to the floor in tears. She drops to her knees to be at her level, quietly says her name, sitting there broken, and he looks her straight in the eyes with full confidence and promises once again, I definitely will not die. Angelina Chantel, he has all the baggage of knowledge and experience taught to her by old friends, and he begs her to just trust. But Angelina looks at the floor, cries, and says that all people like her can really only watch as adventures drift away. She feels like everyone else risks everything, and she just sits aside and admires Chantelser. That is not true at all. She explains that because of her ability to so accurately select quests, they can go out into the world feeling safe. He tells her that when it really gets tough there, just the thought of her smile gives them the strength to keep going. He looked her straight in the eyes and asked her never to say again that she does nothing for them. Angelina's tears well up again as she quietly whispers his name, and then she can't hold back and hugs him, sobbing, while Jessica stands behind the counter and watches. Then Jessica started laughing at all of this, remembering how she really thought she was doomed, but he can't help himself. He teases Chin about his ridiculously pompous, I won't die, causing Chin to hide his face in complete shame. Angelina smiles with relief and tells the group that she is simply happy Jessica is safe and unharmed. Jessica winked at her with a wide smile and said that she still gave her a promise. While they were chatting at the bar, someone suddenly said, for Jessica as an adventurer, the time is officially over. And for the better, she finally opened the shop she dreamed of, and it turned out that the local girls are already just thrilled. Jessica leans toward Angelina and whispers, asking if the person sitting nearby is really a relative of Shin. Shinen and Angelina just froze at this question when they were near. At the table, Cassandra is just sitting with Schwain and Lime, and everyone is shocked that she is hanging out with them. Cassandra blushed and explained embarrassedly that she had just accidentally entered and seen them, but did not want to interrupt them. Chantra wants to lighten the mood and asks Jessica to bring out something to eat that everyone could share. So, Jessica smiles, grabbing a snack, and tells him that lately he has clearly learned a few clever moves. Jessica says she will go place the order while the company goes to the terrace, so she simply says, thank you. He leads the others outside, and Jessica waves to them from the bar. Everyone clinks their mugs and celebrates the completion of the mission. Shin and Cassandra happily rush to the huge table with dishes. Schwain eagerly devours the food, while Angelina and Jessica talk nearby. Cassandra asks if these are the comrades she gathered for him, and adds with a smile, they look like a decent company. Jessica agrees, although she admits she was surprised. He started uniting with monsters, leaving. They were amazed they could not believe that the bosses really allowed their party, despite Shin's achievements. Angelina looks completely exhausted. She says that the whole process was a real ordeal. Jessica then asks if she already has a name for his party, but he and Lime still haven't decided. Cassandra finally throws out a name for the group, Legion, and the others freeze to think about how it sounds. Shin is delighted but wants to make sure everyone agrees. Cassandra and Schwain don't mind, and even Lime says it sounds cool, so they immediately decide to make it official. The whole team clinks mugs in a toast, and she announces that from now on they are officially Legion. Later that night, Shin sets off back through the city streets under the bright full moon. He hums a quiet melody while trying to remember exactly where that house is. Lime and Schwain are no longer thinking about anything except food and where to spend the night. Approaching the building, he suddenly notices someone is standing by the front door. He crouches behind the wall to hide. Nearby, a rat spoke and whispered that this person has been waiting there since the sun hadn't even set. Shen thanks his little informant and peeks around the corner, but suddenly notices something that makes him freeze in place. The stick in this person's hands looks too familiar to just ignore. He decides to simply approach and stand opposite, stopping a few steps away, and directly asks if she is really Sue. The moon is high above the city, gently illuminating the clouds on a quiet night. Sue is waiting right outside, looking quite irritated. She calls Shun an idiot and complains about how long she has been standing there. Shin stands rooted to the spot, looking at the girl in the hood, and cannot believe that it is really her. But she does not waste time. She says, hey, and immediately asks if the rumors are true that he is leaving the Golden Fleece. She is completely stunned by what she already knows, and even before he manages to explain, she throws herself into his arms. He does not understand at all what is happening, especially when she starts leaning in so close. And after a long breath, she looks him straight in the eyes and says that he smells like some other woman, that it just drives you crazy. He blushes madly and asks her what she is even talking about. He tries to stay calm, though he stammers, and asks her why she was hanging around his house at such a late hour. Finally, Asu steps back, becomes a bit more serious, and tells him that she came because she needs to ask him a favor. She is sweating and cannot believe her ears when At asks if he is really afraid. She looks him straight in the face and says that she wants him to go with her to the village of Gorgons. She just stands there, stunned, repeating the name of the place as if he cannot comprehend it. The mood is heavy, so he tries to ease the tension, suggests brewing tea, and asks her to wait a second while. Aid relaxes, takes off her coat, and shows off her rank equipment. While they settle in, she suspiciously asks if she was in the group that agreed to expel him, wondering why. She appears right now with a request. He hands her a hot mug and warns her to be careful. She swallows and asks him to briefly tell what happened while she was gone, and almost immediately realizes that she hasn't even talked to Jason yet. He sits down and tells everything that happened since his expulsion, even about how they created a new guild. Ath doesn't smile at all. She looks at him with a burning gaze and asks if he has the slightest idea why she is so angry now. She starts sweating, thinking to herself that for some reason he is the one being scolded now. He bows his head low, apologizes, and honestly tells Addie that he simply doesn't know what to say. Af sighs deeply and tells him to at least listen to her for a minute. He leans back and she asks, "Did you even bother to sit down and really talk to Jason?" She reminds him that once the three of them promised to become heroes together. Ath insists that Jason would never really kick him out of the party, and she replies that Jason directly told him he is not strong enough. He recalls how Jason told him that lately he only helps others and seems to have given up on himself, so nah. Math says that Jason is just a complete idiot who is insincere in his feelings. Probably, he just wanted to push him with a kick to motivate him. An angry expression appeared on her face, and she says she is sure that the stupid woman was the one whispering in Jason's ear while she was away. Ath starts mocking Medea, imitating how she supposedly told Jason that she would check if he was worthy of their group, because she thinks Medea was the one who put all this nonsense into his head. Ath asked Shin, "Didn't you know that Jason is a real troublemaker? They grew up together, and Shin had to admit that the guy was always a big headache." He looks away and tells her that even if she is right about how Jason behaves, there are things that should not be spoken aloud. Shin falls silent for a moment and looks as if he has something heavy on his soul. Ath interjects, lowering her gaze. She explains that she is angry not only at him at Jason, but actually angry at herself for not noticing how hard it was for him. She bows low before him and says she sincerely regrets it she let him down, even though they have known each other as if forever. After the apology, Ath raises his head and asks point-blank if that means he really will not return to the Golden Fleece party. Shink punched so hard that his hand trembled and said to Athi, "Sorry." He looks her straight in the eyes, with a serious expression on his face, and insists that he has no intention of going back there at all. Folk is gasping and says that she understands, admitting that it is indeed so. She adds that he should not relax too much, she will properly punish him, Jason, and these words really sent a chill down his spine. Ath changes the subject and tells Shin that he has another question for him. She looks a little nervous when she asks what Cassandra is really like. Shin smiles and says that she is a wonderful person, a bit shy, but very skilled and someone he can definitely rely on. Leaning back on the bed, Ath says that usually such reliability is hard to find unless you are dealing with the high-level guild, B rank. She says that so far everything is fine, adding that the guild still has no active quests, so he asks if he can clarify this with his team. Ath gently smiles at him and thanks him, and she just looks relieved finally. Everything between them is back to how it was before. The night does not retreat, the full moon hangs high above the city. Finally, Ath yawned widely and said that she was completely exhausted from talking for so long. Shin put down his drink and suggested going to the guild together tomorrow morning. She easily agreed. Suddenly, 8 settled down right here and says she's going to sleep and immediately starts to panic, reminding her that this is actually his room. But she just blushes and says that it doesn't bother her at all. They had slept in the same bed since they were little. She turns completely red, starts sweating, and shouts that they were just little children when they slept in the same bed. Ath pays no attention to his panic, just settles under the blanket and says to him, "Good night," as if it's no big deal. Chantra tries to stop her, shouts that he hasn't finished speaking yet, and asks if she really will throw him out on the street. He's literally homeless. Aith just peeks out from under the blanket with a sad look and tells Shin that he is actually quite mean to her. It works on him completely, and although he is still embarrassed, he sighs and tells her that he can stay just for one night in. Chuckles, burying his face in the pillow, smiles, and tells Shin that he is actually a very good person. Shin gave up and gently said to her good night, sitting on the floor by the bed while helping Takeru lie down. He looks completely exhausted, but tells himself it's time to get his things in order to finally get a proper sleep. As soon as he starts to move, Ath grabs his sleeve in her sleep and mumbles for him not to go. Shin just looks down at her, thinking of her as Sue. He suddenly realizes how crazy it is. He returned, and his company has practically fallen apart, and other childhood friends are still missing. She looks completely broken, thinking about how his other half started a new party and left him all alone in this city. Mathematics quietly reassures him, whispers that it is near, but it simply remains silent. And the sun begins to rise over that large stone house where they spent the night. She starts waking up at the table, rubbing his eyes, smells something cooking, and asks what that smell is. He yawns widely, stretches his back, and says, "Good morning." Ath says good morning to him, blushing a little. She says she prepared breakfast with troll meat and herbs to give him some strength. Shun. She thinks it's just a new recipe, though the meat sounds strange, and Ath looks worried and asks if she is bothering him because he is so tired. Shin quickly tells her, by no means, explaining that he was actually just thinking about how all this evokes nostalgia. He asks her to just eat, takes a big bite, and his face instantly shows complete shock from the taste. He says in surprise that it is really tasty, just like pork, and Ath smiles and says she knew it. This is her best creation. Shin finishes his drink, thinking to himself that despite the strange ingredients, the dish was actually wonderful. He sets down the mug and thanks Ott for the food. Ott. She sipped from her cup and noted that he came to them asking for work, a big deal. She added that it seems he is finally making real progress. And then, the conversation turns to Jason. He says that during his travels, he came across reliable information. It seems he is now on a mission to find ingredients for a panacea. And Jason does not hide, he wants to apply specific skills to get it. Returning to the present, Shin reveals the whole essence to his new team and asks everyone, "What do you think? Do we take this job?" Shenwender exclaims joyfully, if the mission is difficult, he will finally be able to test himself against someone truly strong, and Shwine just hopes it will be easy money. Cassandra is not thrilled at all and asks Shin if he is really ready to help after all. These are the same people who kicked him out onto the street. Someone tries to brush it off, saying it is a misunderstanding, but At sharply intervenes and explains, this is not about that old party, but her personal request. She becomes completely serious and says that if she had been there, she would never have allowed those guys to do to him what happened. Under her supervision, this would not have happened, and her words leave a strong impression. Between her and Cassandra, there is a tense silence. They simply compete silently with their looks. Shun instantly intervened between them to diffuse the tension, shouted at both to be quiet, we are still in the guild. From the side came, he is absolutely right. She sees in surprise as Angelina approaches, and directly tells him that Siu is on his side. She adds that he is a reliable client, so the whole deal now looks much more plausible. In the appendix, Angelina says she can personally vouch for him. She has known him since the very first days, so she asks the team to say what they think about it. Cassandra pauses for a moment, then quietly mutters that it seems they really have no choice. Finally, she gives in and officially informs everyone that they will take on this job. But then she looks at Shin and asks if he planned to go on this mission, even if the rest said no. She says that, being partners, she sees right through him, but still checks if Lime and Shwine agree with the plan. She is clearly very nervous about this situation, but Shwine and Lime are fully on board and already ready to move. Cassandra properly introduced herself to Aith, and then Shwine and Lime, who stood up straight and proudly stated their names. Shin pulls out papers to make the contract official, but Aith gets distracted. Shin's voice sounds too familiar to him. Walking through the city, Shin can't get rid of thoughts about the sister Aith mentioned earlier, while she points to a nearby shop. Shwine seizes the opportunity to inspect the new equipment. He approaches a local stall and tests the sharpness of a huge blade. Later in the library, Angelina approaches Shin to find out if he has come across anything creepy in those old files he is digging through. The records tell of a terrible monster created by demons, capable of biting through mithril. Shen emphasizes that the last time it was seen was near their destination point. Angelina, however, hopes that she is just too worried because of old rumors. She is a bit sweaty and warns him, it is dangerous, there one can encounter an A-rank monster. Shin just laughs and tells her that if something that scary appears, he will just grab Ath and run away. She felt much better knowing that now they have reliable allies with them. Shwine and Lime grumbled in agreement, and Shun promised to make sure everyone returned safe and sound, and just then add. Ath arrived in a large, horse-drawn carriage and apologized for the burden. Cassandra was truly shocked. She asks if this luxurious ride is really Shin's personal property, since Ath was a real man. Math usually goes gathering in the wilderness, where the stagecoach doesn't even go. She says she moonlights and earns a lot of money, that's why they got their own wheels for the trip. Shen decides that he and Ath will just take turns driving. Looking back at the others, he tells Cassandra and Shwine that they are now officially on guard during the trip, and with that, he shouts for everyone to move. Their goal is the remote village of Gorgon, so the carriage begins rolling through the rocky plains. As soon as they are on the road, Shen looks back and asks if the two girls want to go into the carriage to rest a bit. None of them wants to give in. Cassandra insists that Shen should rest, and Ath insists that she is fine and that Cassandra should go inside, and Shin ends up in the middle. Cassandra sighed and said that everyone should try to get along during this trip. The journey takes them through all kinds of terrain, and they spend the night in a washed-out riverbed. After some distance, Cassandra looked back and noticed that the forest was getting denser. Shan had whispered to himself that they were almost near the village they planned to use as a base. He thinks that if everything goes well, they will get there by tonight, but a sudden dull blow from behind the carriage caught him off guard when Shwine warns guests are coming. He waved in the air and said he didn't feel anyone strongly, but still didn't mind having some fun, and just then, the group horrified realizes they are surrounded by a huge swarm of my tango monster, and Shwine jumps down to deal with it while Yalshin shouts that they don't want any trouble. He asks the creatures to just let them pass, but it is in vain. She sees that the leader will not listen to reason and suspects that something is wrong with Nyanshin, so she. Shwine steps forward and decisively says to Shen, "Just leave the fight to me." Shin loudly screams about poison, and Ashwin starts swinging his heavy blade, clearing the way. Cassandra rushed into action, saying she would make sure the carriage was safe. She tells him she has already taken care of it and let's release a burst of energy and smash the mushroom monster's back. Angelina is shocked. In front of her, a huge wall of flame destroys the monsters, and Shin just glances and asks if you see how incredible Cassandra is. But it's not just her. Shwayne rushes so fast, like a black wind, showing a wild power that tears through the swarm. And even despite all this, Shen understands there are too many enemies for them to handle like this. Cassandra asks what the plan is, and he is about to answer, but everyone suddenly notices something strange. The monsters begin to bubble and stick together into one mass. Shin sees the danger and shouts to Shwayne, "Retreat immediately." The ground is already starting to tremble. The group retreats at the last moment. A huge, disgusting mass forms before them, and it shouts, "What the hell is this?" Turns out all those monsters they just defeated are merging into one gigantic creature, and it cannot believe what it sees. Someone tries to knock it down with a gust of wind magic, but Chin shouts that they can't just let this thing grow. Cassandra looks straight at the huge beast and says, "We need to finish it off now, before it gets even worse." Others despairingly ask how they are supposed to deal with this, and she says that if she unleashes all her power, the entire forest will be destroyed too, and she understands this is a huge problem. The huge mushroom monster lets out a loud roar that shakes the entire forest. Shins does not take his eyes off, thinking that no matter how big it becomes, somewhere inside it still hides a core. He does not take his eyes off the beast because he knows one precise shot and it will fall. Angelina starts casting spells, and Shwine coldly says to the enemy, "We are not here for talk." She looks at both of them and asks for help to finish this together. Suddenly, the group notices that the monster's hand is bubbling and turning into something even more terrible. It seems this creature literally sucks magic from the very earth to avoid weakening. The monster swung its huge paw down the ground shattered, and it almost crushed the squad. They should have realized that this thing is much faster than it seems, while Cassandra asks which planet this is. He tells her to keep the monster busy until he gives the signal, and she replies, "Leave it to me." Shenyul's attention. Everyone listen. They are gathering and preparing for the final push. The monster swung its huge heavy hand, tearing trees nearby. Chantalina Angelina enhances his attack and begins her incantation chant. Shwine says he feels a wild power rushing through him. Alchantal's Shwayne time to move, and the orc replies that he is ready. Energy began to swirl around Shinsword. He is preparing to deliver a crushing blow. He lunged down from the air, aiming a powerful strike directly at the monster. The huge beast froze, as if stunned. The blow hit right in its face. Cassandra holds that thing distracted, while Shen releases a huge blade of wind. They shout that today they will finish this, and Shwayne retreats, catching his breath. Shen puts all his strength into a huge swing that cuts a giant, empty circle right in the middle of the monster's chest. Angelina looks in shock, wondering if one strike was enough to finish it off, but she keeps him on guard and says this is not the end yet. The creature's flesh begins to stretch and sew itself back together, and someone suddenly realizes the beast is actually still alive and trying to heal itself. Swain notices a glowing core deep inside the monsters, among the pile of constantly regenerating flesh, and decides to make his move. He tightens his weapon, dark energy wraps around his arm, and he rushes into a furious, spinning aerial attack. She rushes forward, shouting that he is running to save him, but Cassandra grabs him and says, "Just wait and watch." The blade perfectly cuts into the monster's heart, and Swain just sits with a confident smile, quietly laughing because a huge monster finally begins to dissolve into nothingness, and Shen raises his sword up, joyfully exclaiming that he finally succeeded. Later, Shen stands over Swain. The orc catches his breath and says he can't believe how lightning fast he reacted in that split second. Swain just shrugged and waved it off, saying he was lucky. He just aimed at the noisiest part. Cassandra walked by and said he did well. The giant monster is finally defeated and melting into a puddle, so Cassandra turns to Shen and asks, "What are you going to do with the message?" He looked at the remains and thought it was a pity to just leave them here, so he tells her he has a pretty good idea. The group begins to disperse, and suddenly someone shouts, "It's finally over," and Angelina calls everyone because she finished cooking. She tells Shen that she made a masterpiece again, and he replies that he is really impressed and wants to try it, but it becomes strange when the whole team, Swain, Lime, and even Cassandra, stands there, completely scared of what might be in the cauldron. Everyone is frozen, staring at the bubbling soup, and someone asks if she really used those monster mushrooms as the main ingredient. The group hesitates whether it is safe to eat at all, but finally decides to take the risk and try it to see what happens. Swain and Lime look at the skewers as if preparing for battle, and Cassandra just looks at the food with complete distrust. As soon as they take a bite, Cassandra's eyes widen in shock, and Swain immediately exclaims that the food is truly incredible. He says he could eat this forever, and even Cassandra admits it annoys her how much he actually likes this dish. Cassandra is still shocked that she really turned those monsters into food, so she explains that his gift tells him exactly how to clean and prepare any ingredient. When Angelina pours more soup, she says that Shin has really changed since they started traveling together, and Shin is unsure and asks if she really thinks so, but Angelina seriously tells him that she noticed before, when he was still in the old party, he never fought so well. Shan pauses for a moment and says, if he really has gotten better, it is primarily thanks to the people he can truly trust. He clenches his fist and admits he finally realized that he can really grow. Angelina looks away and simply replies quietly. She looks into the bowl and suddenly realizes she is a little annoyed at how far he has progressed without her. She notices her mumbling and asks if she said something, but she just waves him off and says it's nothing. Moving on, Shen tells the group that they need to start resting in turns to be ready for tomorrow, but suddenly Cassandra froze. Shin also hears it, puts his palm to his ear, and tries to understand if someone is really singing in the dark. The whole group becomes alert. Shin wonders if it's just peasants, and Angelina asks in surprise who would even be here so late at night. Cassandra decides that they should go and check it out, so Angelina says not to push and to gather. As soon as the barrier is set, she says he will manage, and they both began to squeeze through thick bushes and grass, trying to find the source. Shin points forward and notices that a little higher up the path there is an open space. Cassandra suddenly realizes the singing they heard is coming exactly from there. As they approach closer, Cassandra asks him what he sees, but he only silently gazes through the trees at. In a wide clearing under the bright full moon, they finally see something incredible. The girl stands on a rock, with her back to them, glowing with a strange light. Shun froze at her beautiful voice. Meanwhile, Cassandra notices that even the air around seems to sparkle, but then the engine stalls for a second, and I get the feeling that there is something too familiar in that voice. He called out to check if anyone was there, and it completely threw the girl off balance. She panics, wondering if he really noticed that she was standing there. Perseus laughs to himself. He was sure he had hidden perfectly, and the girl is shocked. Shin actually noticed her. Perseus strikes a dramatic pose and says that it must be the power of love, leaving the girl standing in complete silence. She starts to sweat as she realizes that all this time someone was actually hiding in the forest. Perseus, with a self-satisfied smile, declares that he immediately knew it was her, and she simply calls him by name and throws out that eavesdropping does not suit him at all. He begins to call her his singer and says that she, as always, is beautiful, and she just looks at him with disgust. Perseus drops to one knee and continues to play the role, although she says she hates him, so she just yells at him, demanding to know why he is here at all. He tells her the reason is obvious and begins enthusiastically talking about how her eyes sparkle like stars. He does not stop there and praises her sunny hair, saying that her little crooked teeth are actually very cute. He says he is here only to not miss a single moment of her beauty. But the girl is already completely tired of all this, and Perseus looks completely confused, asking what is wrong with his princess. The group from the bushes watches the scene, and Cassandra asks if those two were really the ones who sang earlier. Meanwhile, he said he heard the words princess and knight, and immediately thought it might be a secret meeting, and Angelina adds that it looks like a hidden date between people from different social classes, like some kind of hidden and our hidden room. A furious quarrel broke out between them. The girl in the kimono shouted at Perseus that he was just bothering her, and yelled at the pursuer, "Go home." It seems Perseus is delighted, blushing and shouting for her to throw even more insults at him. He suddenly changes the subject, and says that he doesn't know who they are or where they came from, but, looking straight at their hideout, he says that Eve's fall is by no means commendable, and adds that it's time to show up. The group raises their hands up. Angelina immediately apologizes, and Shin tries to pass it off as a joke, saying the singing was so beautiful he just couldn't move. Perseus thinks that's a cool attitude, but soon becomes serious and asks who they are and what they are doing in the forest. She explains that they are just travelers on a mission from Corinthos, searching for ingredients for a new potion. Perseus listens to their story and says it's a long journey. He sympathizes with them, but warns them. They say that they probably won't find those materials in these borderlands. Shin raises his voice to explain their position, making Perseus askew. That's him. Shin raises the crest and calls himself Sclepius from the Panacea Guild, saying he researches medicine and came here for a rare material. The girl in the kimono notices the crest and realizes she had noticed it before in the city. Angelina asks Shin if he is sure about this, but he decides it's better to just tell the truth. And here he reveals the truth. What he was looking for is the blood of a monster known as the Gorgon. Perseus completely loses his temper and, standing nearby, demands, "What did you just say?" The girl whispers those words under her breath. Her hand begins to tremble as she asks what he meant, and suddenly her hair turns into hissing snakes. She screams that the people who kidnapped her sisters were. Pointing directly at Shin's group, she shouts, "It was them, I will never forgive you." Perseus loses his head over the kidnapping claim, and Shen begs for an explanation. It's just a big misunderstanding. But the guy just reaches for his weapon and says that talking is pointless. You can't reason with a girl in such a state. He pulls out a massive curved sword and tells them to take it as mercy, because they are about to become nothing but rust on his blade. She wonders what kind of sword it is, and he clearly makes it known he is not going to just stand there and let himself be killed. Perseus suddenly lunges forward at a furious speed and catches Shen off guard for a second. Cassandra approaches and perfectly blocks the strike, telling him she knew he would try something like that while Angelina is watching. Perseus looked at her hair and suddenly froze, asking if she was really a demon. She doesn't care. She directly asks if he is finally ready to sit down and talk, since now he is dealing with a demon. Instead of fighting, Perseus begins to tremble and calls her pathetic, saying she herself has probably endured a lot of pain. He looks her straight in the eyes and asks if she is really trying to say that now she is the hunter. Clash between Perseus and Cassandra escalates to the limit. Perseus grumbles that the whole fight is just going in circles, but you need to. He is really worried. He has never seen Cassandra lean back like that, and he feels that Perseus moves much faster than any ordinary beer anchor. Angelina shouts the name. She sees that the situation is rapidly going downhill, especially because Cassandra must put everything into her strikes to keep the guy occupied. He barely holds her back while they exchange heavy blows. She says that she will handle that guy herself, and orders him to stop standing and watching and go help the girl in the kimono before things get worse. She rushed to run, but as soon as he approached, the girl raised her eyes and said that she is releasing her demonic eye in her. Her eyes lit up with some strange light, and she shouted for him to become stone. Shen tries to block the dazzling glare, but is a second too late. Petrification strikes his hand and instantly begins to spread. He stands for a moment, looking down at the hand that is now completely made of stone, and feels its incredible heaviness. They hold him, and the girl notes that he clearly knew about her power, but did not manage to dodge it. She realizes if he had not covered himself in advance with a few moves, that last step would have turned into a disaster. He only hopes that Cassandra and the others are okay. Perseus stands so self-satisfied and admits that the trick with the mirror shield really caught him off guard, while the girl clicks her tongue, clearly irritated. He asks him what he will do next, saying that if he simply repents and returns the people he took, maybe he will manage to convince the princess to spare Shen. But she does not back down at all. He tells that guy that it is still too early for such loud speeches while Perseus completely loses control. He He is shocked that Asclepius is still standing and cannot understand why the petrification did not work. Shun instantly casts a healing spell to mend the damage on his arm and sincerely thanks Angelina for intervening and saving him at the last moment. Angelina calls Schwain to make his move, and the big guy is more than ready to rush straight into the thick of the battle. Chantal is a real salvation for them when Schwain rushes straight at the enemy, catching everyone off guard like SB. A small object falls through the air, an obvious sign that Shin's plan is finally coming together. He grabs the girl by the hand and lets her know that they were lucky to figure out her power, so her evil glare will no longer work on them. The girl in the kimono spoke up and asked everyone to put down their swords for just a moment, so as not to make the situation worse. But she is not finished, yet she tells the group that he still wants to try to truly talk to them before anyone else gets hurt. He turns back to Schwain and tells him not to kill that guy, and the orc just snaps his fingers and assures that he will handle it himself. Perseus simply loses his head. He cannot believe that Shin is really standing here giving orders to the orc as if it were nothing. The boy clenches his teeth, tries to stay calm, and firmly repeats, as a knight of the princess, he cannot just give up and leave. Schwain does not give him a chance to finish. He bursts in, and with one powerful blow pins Perseus to the ground. Looking down at the broken knight, someone aloud asked if that boy was really worth all the trouble they had just gone through. Cassandra put away her weapon and admitted that for some reason during all this chaos, she simply could not find her rhythm. Shin reaches out to the Gorgon and asks if she is finally ready to sit down and talk now that the fight is over. The girl lowers her eyes and seems to whisper that she will speak only if they promise not to ruin her night, and thus the confrontation finally ends. Shin watches as the group gradually calms down and mentally tells himself that he never thought it could be any different. The group moves the conversation to a cozy water mill nearby, hidden by the waterfall under the moonlight. Upon entering, Perseus hits his head on the floor in a passionate apology, and it turns out that once he was a solo adventurer of rank B. Cassandra tells him, just forget about it, the main thing is that we all survived. She looks around and asks if everyone agrees with that. The girl agrees. Conversation is definitely the best way to resolve this, so she decides to get down to business. She suggests starting over to get to know each other properly, to clarify everything, sitting there with Perseus while we are in the same place with her. He proudly introduces himself as the leader of a rank B party known as the Legion, originally from the city of Corinth. The girl brings out hot drinks for everyone and looks hopefully to see if they like their taste. Shin swallowed deeply. Looking at him, she is clearly surprised at how quickly he began to feel at home here. She leaned closer and asked Shen if he secretly tames monsters, and this completely caught him off guard. Shinklier heats up the intrigue, explaining that his gift is actually a universal translator, but a voice from the side says he is completely wrong. He keeps talking, insisting that he only knows how to hear and speak with animals or monsters, but has no power to control them. Medusa listens and asks if that is really so. It is interesting whether those creatures that follow Shin really do so of their own free will. Shin just smiles and tells her that this is exactly so they are his dear companions. Medusa is truly stunned to learn that he is telling the truth. Perseus exploded, shouting that this is unfair. She understands the princess. Angelina instantly told him to shut up. Finally, the girl properly introduces herself. She is Medusa from the Gorgon village of Gree. She explained that her eyes once turned anyone they looked at into stone, at least until recently. She says she can so easily lift that curse, and Angelina suggests that they can just call it, as for short, but Angel. Yelena still had one big question spinning in her head. Exactly what potion had he given Chen earlier? Shenzhen knows well how hard it is, and Angelina notes that even the highest level mages barely manage to lift curses. However, she still froze in surprise. How did he handle everything so quickly, especially since he just mixed that potion on the fly? She admits when she was an adventurer, she had never seen anything like that, so Shin begins to explain that. The secret appeared right before them. Someone points to several specific bottles, and Medusa notices they are all different colors. Medusa looks confused and asks again what he means, lifting those little potion bottles just like that. Shin decides to lay everything out clearly for everyone, and Angelina picks up and explains exactly how they prepared for the meeting with the Gorgon. He tells how he adjusted the ingredients searching for the best mix and made several different versions just to deal with the problem of turning to stone. Holding a petrified mushroom in his hands, he tells them that after he looked at the actual test results, they spent days and nights digging through old books and legends, looking for a way to make it work, which eventually led to. Angelina works focused at the table, and around her the circle of magic shines brightly. A single drop of the new potion falls on the petrified mushroom. It instantly begins to return to its original form, and Angelina calls out to everyone, "Watch closely how this happens." Shin stands there confidently and finally reveals his unique gift. He is called the Child of the God of Medicine, who. This gives him the power to analyze and cure almost any disease, curse, or poison, and he can also quickly concoct the necessary medicines himself. Perseus completely loses his head and, half shouting, asks if she is really one of those famous members of the Golden Fleece group. Suddenly he understands why everything sounded so familiar, and Angelina just listens as he puts it all together. Perseus says that even in his distant hometown, legends circulated about that group. Supposedly, they are future stars with incredible, almost inhuman gifts. Shin asks Medusa if this is enough proof that he does not intend to do anything vile with her blood, and Perseus says that for him it is a great honor just to meet him. Medusa says somewhat uncertainly that her blood is a true deadly poison to anyone who touches it. Turns out Chantal was only half right. When her kin transforms, this poison suddenly becomes a powerful healing agent. Shenzhen says that after seeing everything with his own eyes, he became completely sure of that secret, and Medusa admits that even in her village, only a few people truly know the truth about her blood, and she can hardly believe that she really managed to figure everything out on her own with his help. Perseus stands, amazed. He cannot comprehend how crazy it is that the princess's blood hid such a secret. And he begins to insist that being a knight is such a great responsibility, and the other simply replies, "You really are something special." They talk about Shin Shif. He says he heard that Perseus was once an adventurer himself, and emphasizes that Cassandra is a top-level fighter, even for the B rank. So he asks how Perseus actually managed to stop her, since Perseus definitely knows that his usual sword skills would not have been enough. Perseus explains that he was just lucky with the choice of weapon, and the leading Shintoist asks if he means that strangely shaped saber lying right there. Perseus confirms this and boasts, the sword is called Arpha, and it is his masterpiece, created thanks to the creator's gift to exterminate monsters. At first, he made it just to have at least a chance against the Gorgon, but it turned out that it saved him quite unexpectedly. Finally, she understood everything. The sword is actually a killer of female monsters, and this explains why it worked so well against Cassandra before. She notices, under normal circumstances, an ordinary monster wouldn't have even moved. Cassandra finally forced him to pull out his trump card, a mirror shield. He tells her that by itself it is quite impressive. Then he turns back to Perseus and asks, why would someone with such skills even retire, especially when the Shenzhen gift is just a huge money pit? Perseus says that life in the city has become simply unbearably stressful, and admits that he only returned because his partner caused a loud scandal. Hearing this, Shin grimaced and said it sounded like a real disaster, but Perseus was not worried at all. He laughed and waved it off, saying it was even lucky that's how he found his princess, while Shin and Medusa just looked at him with blank faces. The conversation becomes tense when Shin brings up the old non-aggression pact between the village of Denny and Medusa's hometown, noting that once upon a time, a few people wandered here, trading goods, but when he returned, all that hustle and bustle had completely died down. It turned out like this. A strange disease struck the village, trade froze, and suddenly monsters filled the roads, so no one came or went anymore. Perseus adds that he knew nothing about medicine, so he left the treatment to the experts, while he himself stood guard all the time. Perseus again puts on a drama, strikes a pose, and shouts that this is his great, fateful meeting with the songstrip. He tries to talk about the moonlit night, but Medusa forcefully silences him, and Shen scolds him to stop. "We are trying to talk." Medusa becomes serious, explaining that people in her village have been disappearing lately, and although everyone searched, they found no trace. She lowers her eyes, looks completely broken, and says that even her own elder sister has disappeared recently. Then she tells that she heard about a stranger in the human village and ran to look in hopes of finding the kidnapper, but instead only came across Perseus. She still hasn't found the real culprit. Instead of solving the mystery, some weirdo stuck to her, following her everywhere. So she decided her only way out is to become bait, to lure the kidnapper into the open so he would finally start to understand. Angelina notes that they didn't see anyone suspicious on the way, and Shen adds that they only met Perseus and Medusa. Perseus adds that in his village no one is really strong enough to kidnap Gorgons, and that makes everything even stranger. Shin clenches his fist as realization hits him. Indeed, there is only one possibility who is behind all this. Shin looks at Angelina and the truth strikes him. If the Gorgon is taken without a fight, it means there is a traitor in the tribe. The moon hangs high above the clouds, and the night slowly stretches on. Shin jumps out of the carriage and immediately sees Angelina by the campfire. She praised him. "Good job," and asked where Sue is hiding. She sits down and explains that he let him sleep because he used too much magic. Angelina just nods, absorbing it while he doesn't stop talking, insisting that even if she was ready to fight, it was just madness there. He says that analyzing a rank be curse on the fly, and immediately coming up with a cure is a crazy demand. Angelina looks at the blade, sees her reflection there, and thinks about how insane their skills are compared to hers. She feels useless because she couldn't even buy them time, and admits that they don't deal with magical swords every day. She tightly grips the sword, clearly irritated with herself, and says that all of this is just very annoying. She is overcome with anxiety. What if they get stuck in such a place again, and there is no healer nearby to save them? Suddenly she stands up with a look of complete concentration. It is clear that she has finally decided what she needs to do. Cassandra looks Shin straight in the eyes, full of determination, and says that even if she cannot use her special powers, she will still prove that she can stand up for herself in battle. That he pulls Shin to Lin closer and says that he is just very glad that she is his partner. The sudden compliment caught her off guard and left her completely shocked. She tries to pull herself together, and asking him what suddenly happened to him, still does not back down, looking through her stream of tears. The future, he says that the world of rank A and above that is exactly where they are heading, and it was Cassandra who finally opened his eyes. Cassandra laughs and teases him, saying it's quite natural after all, he is the partner of the legendary Return of the Demon King, and Shinju sighs and says that those are just baseless rumors. But she becomes serious again, and says that on the way here she heard many talks about the Legion. Probably the guild has already made sure that everyone around Corinth knows who they are. He must feel the pressure on them. Crossing his arms, he thinks about how one wrong step can turn them from hunters into the hunted. Knowing what is at stake, Shin decides to do more than just finish the job. Although Sue only asked to get the blood, he really wants to establish relations with the Gorgons forever. Establishing a real connection with Grai would be a huge victory for the Legion for many years to come. Cassandra simply sits by the fire and watches the flames as the night slowly stretches on. Cassandra suddenly catches Chinoff with a sly smile and exposes him, saying that deep down he just wants to save those girls who. Completely confused, she laughed and waved it off, saying she always knew it, it's so like him. She smiles and tells him not to worry, because everyone else will feel the same way. A serious look appears in her eyes. She promises him, if ever he looks like he's about to make the wrong choice, she will do everything to stop him. So, if you're ready for the next episode, I'll return to you guys. As long as he walks the right path, she will be the sword fighting for him. In response, she can only say her name. But he finally smiles and thanks her, agreeing that this is what partnership is about, and they fist bump. The next morning, Asu comes out of the tent with a loud yawn and greets the rest of the group. And Cassandra has already gotten up and is bustling about, gently stroking her back and carrying several warm bowls of breakfast. And Swain also appears, carrying on his shoulders a huge beast he caught, and asks Shun if he managed to rest well. Sue simply smiled tiredly but happily and said she slept like a log because everyone was watching over her. Everyone gathered at the table. Breakfast was served. Finally, it's time to eat. While they eat, Cassandra makes a plan. We will make Denny Village our base and start gathering the necessary information from there. They put all their efforts into searching and rescuing the people who were taken. Swain fully supports this plan. Next, Angelina spoke up and asked everyone how they felt about her specific plans regarding their stay in the village. The group sets off down the road, and at that moment their cart approaches the entrance to the village of Danyi. Perseus is already there waiting for them and loudly greets the members of Panacea Company. Angelina politely bows and thanks Lord Perseus for coming all the way here to welcome her. Perseus tells them to take the cart with them. He goes ahead himself and promises to lead them straight to the chief's house. She looks back. A crowd of villagers is watching them leave, and she feels a little embarrassed. They approach a large building, and Perseus explains that it is the house of the village head and a place for gatherings. The loud clatter of boots breaks the silence. Someone approaches the group and calls out, "Perseus, are you here?" The daughter of the village elder, Andromeda, enters and demanding asks if Perseus caused all this commotion. Shin asks if she can even get out of bed yet, but Andromeda just laughed and waved it off. She says that special medicine worked like a miracle, and she feels completely fine. Watching the conversation, Angelina intervenes and politely asks Lord Perseus, could he introduce everyone to each other? Perseus introduces Andromeda to the team, and she immediately addresses Shin, guessing if she is the same traveler Pell mentioned earlier. Shin maintains the mask, calls herself Squeepiest, and says she is a medicine trader from the city. Then she signals the real Shin to bring the usual supplies they carry, which leads to Perseus and Andromeda peering into a box glowing with high-quality items, and Andromeda can't help but wonder if this doctor is real. Perseus is silently impressed by the quality of the equipment, and Andromeda feels awkward and asks if they can really just take all of it. Shin just smiles kindly and says that is exactly what she does, insisting they take it as a gift to properly start their new friendship. Andromeda thanks the group for the help and, a little excited, asks if they came to see her father. She tells Pell to lead everyone to the dining room while she goes to look for him herself, and Pell replies that he will manage. As they walked, Shin couldn't resist and asked, why is the girl walking if she was supposed to be bedridden? She feels that some secret must be hidden behind that miraculous remedy, so she suggests they first talk to the chief. They are greeted by the man who runs the place and warmly welcomes Asclepius with the guards to their remote home. He introduced himself as Siphius, the official chief of the village of Denny. He tells them that after such a long journey, they shouldn't just stand around, so he invites everyone to sit down. As soon as they settled with their drinks, he says he is sure they have already heard rumors about their situation. He explains that they once traded with that other village until Gorgon appeared at the gatherings and suddenly started attacking people. Before that, everything was fine, but Cepheus looks stunned as he tells how one day everything suddenly changed. The elder says he heard that some traveling merchant sold the village a special antidote, but Andromeda only looked very worried at this news. He explains back then his daughter was poisoned and she almost died. He admits it's a miracle that no one has died yet, but if this continues, it's only a matter of time before things get really bad. Andromeda changes the subject and says she heard about their escorts or some big adventurers, and Angelina confirms she is the top person in the city here. Shin smiled, thanked her for the introduction, and gave his name, and Angelina immediately informed the chief that he leads a B-rank party called Legion. He confidently introduces Cassandra as their swordswoman, adds that she is a half-demoness, and says that she is the one he trusts above all. Then he introduces Lime. It seems she is the one who heals their entire group. The peasant stands stunned as Slime sits on his shoulder, and Perseus just stands and watches this scene. She admits that they cannot be blamed for the shock, but Lime only smiles and tells everyone that he is not a bad slime. So isn't it better to say that this little one is just a harmless healer, and they have nothing to fear? She says there is one more person to introduce. His name is Schwain, an orc warrior who stood behind and guarded the carriage while a bit. The boy from the village approaches and begins gently patting the side of that huge beast they brought. The little one raised his eyes and saw the frightened face of Schwain looking straight at him. He froze in shock. Andromeda grabs the boy and pulls him back, and Schwain just stands, looking puzzled at all this reaction. Peasants began whispering, asking Shin if he really tamed monsters and demons, and Shin only says that he does not have such mad powers. He explains that his gift is called devilry. He simply allows himself to gain the trust of demons through conversation and respect. Cassandra is all embarrassed and shouts that she is not following him because of some gift, and Angelina only smiles and says she believed in him from the very beginning. And so, just like that, Shin offers to help the village deal with their serious problem, the Gorgons. The head looks incredibly relieved and says that they are sincerely grateful because they were just discussing how to gather money bit by bit to order from the guild. So Shin asks if they can guard this place for now, and the chief promises to make sure they receive a worthy reward. Shannon joined and makes it clear to everyone that he has figured out the situation and is already ready to get to work. A few days passed, the group integrated into village life and began helping with its defense. One of the locals offers them modest soup and bread, apologizing that this is all they can offer for now. The Chantels need not worry, they are already stuck on rations, so he is truly very grateful. The woman tells them to just shout if they need anything else, and Angelina promises to inform her if anything happens. When they were left alone, Shen says that Schwain and the rest of the guys are still on patrol, but he wants to go over those findings in detail, explaining that he spent the last few days with the guards and nearby did not notice any large groups. There has been no sign of an attack in the village recently, and Angelina says that the local guards are actually much more skilled than they seem. She admits that he is really shocked at how quickly the villagers and guards got along with Lime and the others, especially considering going there with such a pack of monsters was a crazy gamble, but he sighed with relief because everything turned out well. Angelina shifts the conversation to a more serious note and says it is time to go over the report on the casualties from the last incident. She finishes reviewing Andromeda and other villagers who were attacked, and Angelina cannot help but notice how powerful and high-level this miraculous treatment turned out to be. But she says that to an ordinary person, everyone looks perfectly normal. Although the peasants run around as if full of strength, all this recovery is just a show. He explains that the poison is still in their bodies, and they are only delaying its effect so the medicine can fail at any moment. Angelina suddenly froze and asked if even a person with strength like Shin's cannot simply solve this problem. She admits that he will handle them, but he believes that revealing their cards now is too dangerous. They still have no idea who is behind this. And Angelina has to agree with this, especially since they are essentially still flying blindly. For now, Shin decides they will just give some of his signature tea to the locals to cheer them up and mainly to joke a little about who did this. But he knows that they really need to track down those responsible before this drags on too long. There is one clue, though. In the antidote used to treat the peasants, there was blood of a very special type. Angelina realizes the seriousness of the situation and asks if this means that the attackers are really connected to the merchant from the village. She agrees most likely yes, especially if it concerns the same person who previously used the poison. Cassandra anxiously considers the idea of the poison user being a Gorgon and notes that such a threat clearly exceeds what a B-rank adventurer usually handles. But she still lights up and says that this is exactly the time to show what they are really capable of. Shin and Angelina are both set to the maximum, ready to give everything they have, preparing for the next move. Angelina asks what's next, and she tells her that he is decisively going to visit that hidden village. He even thinks about going to the village elder and saying that he will use his special gift to try to negotiate with those people. Angelina says that the mysterious merchant most likely will not appear, so it's better for them to immediately rush into the lion's den and quickly finish this. Cassandra said that if they really are going to that hidden village, then they will definitely need Perseus' help. Volshin tries to avoid a dirty frontal clash, if that is even possible. Cassandra insists, at least prepare the equipment for what awaits us. The group had just finished talking about moving tonight when there was a knock on the door, so loud that everyone fell silent. A boy named Timos bursts in from the village, all in panic, shouting that he finally found them. He is all sweaty, barely breathing, but squeezes out a shout. There is a huge emergency here, we need to move quickly. Shen grabbed him, looked more closely, and said to take a moment to catch his breath, asking what is really happening here. Timos learns, in the forest, right on the edge of the village, a whole horde of trolls has appeared. Giant creatures are already stomping through the trees, ready to tear everything around apart.